Kenny McCormick dies in nearly every episode, and nobody remembers it happening, creating a running gag that defines the show's early seasons. Yet multiple episodes explicitly show characters remembering Kenny's deaths, with Kenny himself explaining in Mysterian Rises that he's trapped in an endless cycle of dying and coming back while everyone forgets. Cartman discovers his mother is actually his father in a hermaphrodite reveal that shocks everyone and becomes canon. But years later, episode 201 reveals Scott Tenorman's dad was actually Cartman's biological father all along, completely overwriting the hermaphrodite storyline without any explanation. Randy Marsh works as a geologist at the U.S. Geological Survey across multiple seasons, a stable career referenced repeatedly and used as plot points in various episodes. Yet flashback episodes show him as a boy band member in the 1980s, a blockbuster employee, and eventually a full-time marijuana farmer, with no explanation for how all these careers fit into one timeline. And those are just 3 of the mind-bending South Park inconsistencies in this video. Can you imagine all the contradictory stuff there is to uncover when we dive deep into 3 hours of South Park inconsistencies to fall asleep to over the next 3 hours? I was certainly shocked by some of the stuff I found when I made this video. So, if you're ready to be blown away by what's about to come, sit back, relax, maybe check if your favourite character has been completely rewritten. And let's begin. Let's start with Kenny's deaths and whether anyone remembers them. Kenny McCormick has one of television's most famous running gags, dying in nearly every episode during the show's early seasons. The pattern became so iconic that fans expected it, quoted it, and built entire theories around why this kept happening. South Park killed Kenny so consistently that "oh my god, they killed Kenny" became a cultural catchphrase, recognizable even to people who'd never watched the show. But the series cannot decide whether anyone actually remembers these deaths, or whether Kenny's resurrection operates as a universal memory wipe that nobody notices except Kenny himself. In episode Mysterian Rises from season 14, the show establishes explicit rules about Kenny's death cycle. When Kenny reveals himself as the superhero Mysterian, he explains his curse to his friends. He dies, wakes up in his bed the next morning, and nobody remembers what happened. Kenny explicitly states that he's the only one who remembers. He's lived through this cycle countless times, watching himself die in increasingly horrible ways, then waking up to a world where nobody acknowledges it happened. His friends treat each death as if it never occurred. The episode treats this memory wipe as absolute. Kenny is alone in his knowledge, trapped in an endless loop where his deaths mean nothing to anyone else. The Coon vs. Coon and Friends episodes reinforce this rule. Kenny gathers his superhero friends and explains his immortality curse in detail. He tells them about dying repeatedly, about the horror of experiencing death over and over while everyone forgets. His friends react with shock and sympathy. They're hearing this information for the first time, despite witnessing Kenny die dozens of times throughout the series. The episode confirms that the memory wipe extends to everyone, except Kenny. Even his closest friends have no recollection of his previous deaths. This is the established canon. Kenny remembers, nobody else does. But earlier episodes completely contradict this rule. In Cartman's Mom is Still a Dirty Slut, Doctor, Mephisto references Kenny's death from a previous episode while discussing medical procedures. He mentions Kenny dying, treating it as a known event that people remember and can discuss. Other characters don't question this reference. They acknowledge it as something that happened. Throughout various episodes, characters make offhand comments about Kenny dying, referencing his deaths as if they're aware of the pattern. The show even became self-aware about the gag, with characters occasionally acknowledging that Kenny dies a lot. The Halloween episodes treat Kenny's deaths as memorable events. Characters reference specific ways Kenny died in previous Halloween specials, discussing them as shared experiences. They remember these deaths clearly enough to joke about them, to bring them up in conversation, to treat them as part of their collective history with Kenny. If the memory wipe were absolute, none of these references would be possible. Characters would have no framework for discussing Kenny's deaths because they wouldn't remember them happening. Cartman frequently makes jokes about Kenny being poor and dying all the time, suggesting he has some awareness of the pattern even if he doesn't consciously remember each individual death. The joke only works if there's some level of memory or pattern recognition happening. Other characters occasionally express concern about Kenny's well-being in ways that suggest they remember something about his vulnerability, even if they can't articulate specific death memories. The "oh my god, they killed Kenny" catchphrase itself creates a paradox. Stan and Kyle say this line after Kenny dies, expressing shock and outrage. But if they truly forget by the next episode, why do they react with such practiced precision every time? The phrase has become ritualized, suggesting muscle memory or repeated experience. They know exactly what to say when Kenny dies, which implies some level of retention even if conscious memory gets wiped. Season 6 removed Kenny from the show entirely, killing him permanently for an entire season. The characters mourned his death, held a funeral, and referenced his absence throughout the season. When Kenny returned in Season 7, characters acknowledged that he'd been gone. They remembered his extended absence, even if they didn't remember his individual weekly deaths. This selective memory makes no sense. Either they remember Kenny-related events or they don't. The inconsistency is glaring. Either the memory wipe is complete and total, erasing all evidence of Kenny's previous deaths from everyone's minds, including his closest friends who've watched him die dozens of times, or the characters are aware of the pattern and the show just doesn't care about maintaining the internal logic of its own most famous running gag. Mysterion Rises establishes that nobody except Kenny remembers his deaths. This is stated explicitly as the curse's mechanism, but countless other episodes show characters referencing, remembering, and acknowledging Kenny's deaths as events that happened and can be discussed. The show wants Kenny's curse to be both a tragic secret that isolates him in his suffering and a running gag that everyone, including the characters, can acknowledge and joke about. These two versions of how Kenny's deaths work cannot coexist on the same timeline. The memory wipe explanation retroactively breaks years of episodes where characters clearly remembered Kenny dying. Either Kenny is trapped alone with his memories while everyone else forgets, or Kenny dies repeatedly, and people remember it happening, but it keeps happening anyway, for reasons the show never explains. Kenny's impossible death memory connects directly to another character whose identity gets rewritten, because Cartman's father reveal proves South Park will contradict its own shocking twists. In the two-part episode, Cartman's mum is a dirty slut, and Cartman's mum is still a dirty slut, South Park answers the question of who Eric Cartman's father is with one of the most shocking reveals in the series' history. The answer defies biology, breaks logic, and creates an impossible family situation. Then years later, the show gives a completely different answer and treats that as the definitive truth, expecting viewers to forget the original revelation ever happened. The Season 1 finale ends on a cliffhanger. Who is Cartman's father? The town of South Park is snowed in, everyone's trapped together, and the paternity question hangs in the air. Multiple candidates exist because Leanne Cartman has been with many men in town. The episode builds suspense, promises answers, and then cuts to black before revealing the truth. Fans waited months for resolution. Season 2's premiere delivers the answer. After extensive DNA testing and dramatic build-up, Dr. Mephisto announces the results. Leanne Cartman is a hermaphrodite. She has both male and female reproductive organs. She is Eric Cartman's father and mother, the same person. Cartman is the biological child of one parent who fulfilled both reproductive roles. This revelation shocks everyone. The town reacts with confusion and disbelief. Cartman processes this information, and the episode treats this hermaphrodite reveal as the permanent answer to the paternity question. The show commits to this answer. Future episodes reference Leanne's hermaphrodite status as established fact. Characters mention it. The revelation becomes part of South Park's canon, a bizarre truth about Cartman's origins that explains his unusual family situation. Leanne Cartman is both his mother and father. That's the answer. That's what happened. Then episode 201 from season 14 completely rewrites this history. During a confrontation about Cartman's past actions, Mitch Connor reveals that Scott Tenorman's father, Jack Tenorman, was actually Cartman's biological father. This information comes as a shocking twist that retroactively changes one of the darkest episodes in South Park history. Scott Tenorman Must Die becomes infinitely more disturbing because Cartman unknowingly fed Scott his own father in chili, meaning Cartman also ate his own father without knowing it. The episode treats the Jack Tenorman reveal as if it was always true. Characters react to this information as the real answer to Cartman's paternity. There's no mention of the hermaphrodite reveal. Nobody says, "Wait, I thought Leanne was a hermaphrodite." Nobody questions how both revelations can be true. The show simply replaced one father answer with a different father answer and expected everyone to accept it. These two revelations cannot both be accurate. If Leanne Cartman is a hermaphrodite who is both Cartman's mother and father, then Jack Tenorman cannot be Cartman's biological father. If Jack Tenorman is Cartman's biological father, then Leanne cannot be a hermaphrodite who served as both parents. One person cannot be both someone's only parent through hermaphrodite reproduction and also just the mother, while someone else is the father. Basic biology doesn't work that way, even in South Park's absurd universe. The hermaphrodite reveal was explicit and definitive. Dr. Mephisto conducted DNA tests. He announced results. The episode dedicated significant time to establishing this as the answer to the paternity mystery. It wasn't vague or ambiguous. Leanne Cartman has male reproductive organs and is Cartman's father. That's what the show stated clearly. The Jack Tenorman reveal was equally explicit and definitive. The episode shows that Jack Tenorman was Cartman's biological father, making Scott Tenorman his half-brother. This information comes from sources the show treats as credible. It's presented as truth, not speculation or rumour. Cartman's reaction confirms he believes this revelation. Other characters accept it as fact. The show never explains what happened to the hermaphrodite storyline. There's no retcon explanation, no acknowledgement that the previous answer existed, no attempt to reconcile the contradiction. Episode 201 simply ignores the Season 2 revelation and provides a different answer as if the hermaphrodite reveal never happened. The show erased its own canon without comment. This creates narrative chaos. If viewers are supposed to accept the Jack Tenorman reveal as truth, then what was the hermaphrodite reveal? A lie? A mistake? Did Dr. Mephisto get the DNA test wrong? Did Leanne lie about being a hermaphrodite? The show provides no answers because it never acknowledges the contradiction exists. The hermaphrodite reveal served the comedy of Season 2, providing an absurd punchline to a season-long mystery. The Jack Tenorman reveal served the dark comedy of making Scott Tenorman Must Die even more disturbing in hindsight. Both revelations worked for their respective episodes, but both cannot be true simultaneously. Either Leanne Cartman is a hermaphrodite who is both Cartman's mother and father, creating a one-parent family situation, or Jack Tenorman was Cartman's biological father, while Leanne was his mother, creating a traditional two-parent conception. The show chose both answers, depending on which episode needed what kind of shocking revelation. Cartman has two mutually exclusive father origins that the show treats as equally canonical. Cartman's impossible parentage creates one kind of timeline problem, but Randy Marsh's career history proves South Park treats character backgrounds as completely disposable. In numerous episodes across multiple seasons, Randy Marsh works as a geologist. His job at the US Geological Survey appears repeatedly, gets referenced by other characters, and serves as plot points in various storylines. The show establishes Randy's geology career as his stable, long-term profession. He goes to work, discusses geological phenomena, and uses his scientific expertise to solve problems. This is Randy's job. This is what he does for a living. Episode Spontaneous Combustion from Season 3 centers entirely on Randy's geology expertise. The town faces a crisis of people randomly bursting into flames. Randy uses his geological knowledge to investigate the phenomenon, conducting research and presenting findings to town officials. His professional credentials matter to the plot. The episode only works because Randy has legitimate scientific training and occupational authority. He's not just some random guy with opinions, he's a geologist whose expertise is relevant and valued. Multiple other episodes reference Randy working at the US Geological Survey. Characters mention his job. Randy leaves for work. The show treats his geology career as an established fact about his character, part of his identity as the educated professional who happens to be deeply flawed in his personal life. His job grounds him in a kind of normalcy, even when he's behaving absurdly at home. Then later seasons completely abandon this career. Randy becomes a full-time marijuana farmer, running Tegrity Farms. The show treats this as his primary occupation, not a side business or hobby. Randy dedicates his time to growing weed, selling weed, and dealing with marijuana industry problems. Episodes revolve around his farming operation. Other characters identify him as a weed farmer. His geology career vanishes without explanation. The show never depicts Randy quitting his geology job. There's no episode where he gives notice, has a last day at the US Geological Survey, or discusses leaving his career for farming. The geology job simply stops being mentioned. The show replaces his profession with a new one and expects viewers to accept that Randy is now a farmer instead of a scientist. But flashback episodes create even deeper contradictions. In Freemium Isn't Free and other episodes showing Randy's past, we see young Randy as a member of a boy band called Crimson Dawn. He performed on stage, wore leather outfits, and pursued a music career. The flashbacks treat this as a significant period of Randy's life, not a brief teenage phase. He was seriously involved in the band, invested in their success, and defined himself as a musician. Other flashbacks show Randy working retail at Blockbuster Video. He wore the uniform, dealt with customers, and worked as a regular employee at the video rental chain. This appears in episodes set during specific time periods in the 1980s and 1990s, suggesting Randy spent years in retail work before his current life in South Park. These various careers don't fit together on any coherent timeline. If Randy has been a geologist at the US Geological Survey for years as established in early seasons, when was he in a boy band? Becoming a geologist requires years of college education, likely a graduate degree, and then career development in the field. That's a significant time investment that doesn't leave room for pursuing a serious music career with a band that recorded albums and performed shows. When did Randy work at Blockbuster? If he was getting his geology degree and building his career, he wouldn't have been working retail at a video store? If he was working at Blockbuster, when did he have time to be in a band? The flashbacks show these as significant periods of employment, not weekend jobs or summer gigs. Randy's current age and Stan's age create additional timeline problems. Stan is in elementary school, making Randy presumably in his 30s or early 40s. If Randy's geology career at the US Geological Survey spans the years shown in the series, that accounts for significant time. Working backward, his education would have happened in his 20s. His boy band phase supposedly happened in the 1980s. His Blockbuster employment also occurred in past decades. These periods overlap in ways that make no chronological sense. The show wants Randy to have whatever career serves the current episode's needs. Need a character with scientific expertise? Randy's a geologist. Need a character in the marijuana industry? Randy's a farmer. Need a flashback showing Randy's past? He was in a band. Need him to be working class? He worked retail. The show assigns Randy professions based on comedic necessity without maintaining continuity. Either Randy has been a geologist for his entire adult career, as established in dozens of episodes, or he's a career-changing opportunist who was a musician, then retail worker, then geologist, then farmer, or the show simply doesn't care about maintaining consistent character backgrounds and will give Randy whatever profession makes the current episode work. The last option is clearly correct. Randy's professional identity crisis sets up an even stranger problem. because the show's handling of when certain characters join the class proves South Park will rewrite its own history mid-series. In episode Timmy 2000 from Season 4, the character Timmy Birch appears for the first time. The episode explicitly treats this as his first day in the class. Teachers discuss accommodating a new student with disabilities. Students react to Timmy as someone they've never seen before. The whole episode frames Timmy's arrival as a significant event, a new addition to the school who changes the classroom dynamic. He's not someone who's always been there. He's new. Mr. Garrison introduces Timmy to the class, explaining that he'll be joining them. The other kids stare at this unfamiliar student. When Timmy speaks only his name repeatedly, the class reacts with confusion because they've never heard this before. They're encountering Timmy for the first time. The episode dedicates scenes to showing how Timmy integrates into the group, how he finds his place, how the other kids learn to interact with him. This is an origin episode establishing Timmy as a new character in the South Park universe. The following season episode Cripple Fight introduces Jimmy Valmer. The show treats Jimmy's arrival the same way it treated Timmy's. Jimmy is the new kid. He shows up at school and other students meet him for the first time. The episode explicitly frames Jimmy as a recent addition to South Park Elementary. Timmy reacts with jealousy because Jimmy threatens his position as the class's disabled student. Their competition only makes sense if Jimmy just arrived. If Jimmy had always been there, Timmy wouldn't suddenly feel threatened. Both characters become regular cast members after their introduction episodes. They appear in subsequent seasons as established parts of the show's ensemble. The series integrates them into the main group, giving them storylines and character development. Timmy and Jimmy become so ingrained in South Park that it's hard to remember they weren't always there. But later episodes treat Timmy and Jimmy as if they've been in the class since the beginning. Flashback episodes showing events from Season 1 include Timmy and Jimmy in classroom scenes. References to past adventures include them in the group, even though they didn't exist during those early seasons. The show retroactively inserts them into the show's history, pretending they were always part of the cast. Casual references to long-standing relationships with other characters ignore the fact that Timmy and Jimmy were once new students. Characters mention knowing Timmy and Jimmy for years, dating back to periods before their actual introduction episodes. The show treats their presence as eternal, as if they've always attended South Park Elementary alongside Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny. This retroactive continuity makes no sense. Timmy 2000 clearly establishes Timmy's first day at school. Cripple Fight clearly shows Jimmy arriving as a new student. These aren't ambiguous episodes where maybe the characters existed off-screen. The episodes explicitly present them as new additions to the class, people the other students are meeting for the first time. If Timmy and Jimmy were in the class since kindergarten, as later episodes suggest, why did their introduction episodes treat them as newcomers? Why did Mr. Garrison introduce Timmy to the class if Timmy had been his student for years? Why did Timmy feel threatened by Jimmy's arrival if Jimmy had been his classmate all along? The introduction episodes only work if these characters are genuinely new to South Park Elementary. The show can't decide if Timmy and Jimmy were added to the cast in seasons 4 and 5, or if they've been part of the class the entire time and simply weren't shown in early episodes. Both versions appear in different episodes depending on what's convenient. Flashback episodes treat them as always present. Introduction episodes treat them as newcomers. These contradictory versions exist simultaneously. Either Timmy and Jimmy were introduced in seasons 4 and 5 as new students and cannot appear in flashbacks to earlier events, or they've been in the class since the beginning, and their introduction episodes make no sense. The show chose both versions, rewriting its own history to include characters who provably didn't exist during the periods the show retroactively places them in. Timmy and Jimmy's timeline problems reveal how South Park handles character additions. The show introduces new characters when it wants them, then pretends they were always there, ignoring the episodes that established them as newcomers. This casual approach to continuity extends beyond just two characters. It represents the show's willingness to rewrite its own past whenever convenient. The selective memory about when characters joined creates confusion about the show's actual timeline. Were Timmy and Jimmy there from the start but not shown? Did they arrive in seasons 4 and 5? Does the show exist in a fluid timeline where the past changes based on current needs? The answer seems to be the last option, with continuity serving story requirements rather than maintaining logical consistency. This approach to character history becomes even more obvious when examining whether the boys age or stay eternally young, creating deeper contradictions in the show's timeline. The boys attend South Park Elementary as 4th graders. This fact gets stated early in the series and repeated throughout numerous episodes. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny are in 4th grade. Their teacher is Mr. Garrison, later replaced by other teachers, but the grade level stays constant. The boys are 4th graders. That's their identity within the school system. Yet multiple episodes contradict this established grade level. Some episodes explicitly reference them being in 3rd grade. Other episodes show them transitioning between grades in ways that don't match the 4th grade standard. The show can't seem to remember what grade its main characters attend, creating confusion about something as basic as their educational status. Episode 4th grade makes the contradiction obvious through its very title. The episode depicts the boys nervously starting 4th grade, worried about their new teacher and new classroom. They discuss leaving 3rd grade behind. The entire premise centers on the transition from 3rd grade to 4th grade, treating this as a significant change in their school experience. The episode only works if the boys were in 3rd grade before and are now entering 4th grade, but earlier seasons already established them as 4th graders. Episodes from Season 1 refer to them as 4th grade students. Teachers identify them as 4th graders. The boys themselves mention being in 4th grade in episodes that aired before 4th grade. So how can they be starting 4th grade in Season 4 when they were already 4th graders in Season 1? The show treats time passage inconsistently. Characters reference events from last year or last week, suggesting time moves forward normally. Birthday episodes happen, holidays repeat, and seasons change. Time passes in South Park, but the boys never age. They remain the same age visually, they stay in the same grade, and their maturity level doesn't develop. They're frozen in time while time continues moving. Preschool flashback episodes show the boys as very young children, establishing their early friendship. These flashbacks depict events from years ago, setting up a timeline where the boys have known each other since early childhood. If those preschool events happened years before the current series, and the series itself has run for over 2 decades in real time, the boys should have graduated elementary school by now. Some episodes reference multiple years passing. Characters mention things that happened several years earlier. The town celebrates annual events repeatedly across many seasons. If these annual events genuinely happen once per year, then decades have passed in South Park's timeline. But the boys remain 4th graders who look exactly the same as they did in Season 1. Birthday episodes create additional confusion. The boys celebrate birthdays, aging up by 1 year. Stan has a birthday episode. Cartman has birthday episodes. Kyle has birthday-related storylines. If each birthday represents aging 1 year and multiple birthdays have occurred, the boys should be noticeably older. But they're not. They stay the same age despite celebrating multiple birthdays across the series' run. The inconsistency reveals the challenge of long-running animated series. The show needs time to pass for storylines to work, for episodes to reference past events, for character development to occur. But aging the characters would fundamentally change the show's premise. 4th graders have different concerns than high school students or adults. Keeping them young preserves the show's dynamic. South Park simultaneously wants time to pass and wants time to freeze. The boys need to have history, to reference past events, to grow emotionally. But they can't age physically or academically because that would end the show's core setup. So time passes selectively. Events happen and get remembered, but aging doesn't occur. The boys accumulate experiences without accumulating years. Either the boys are perpetually in fourth grade, and flashbacks must account for this fixed timeline, or years pass and they age normally, which would mean they should have graduated elementary school by season 15. The show maintains both versions simultaneously, creating a timeline where the boys can reference years of shared history while remaining the same age throughout. The contradiction extends beyond just grade level. It affects every aspect of the show's continuity. How long has Cartman been torturing Kyle? How many years has Kenny been dying? How long have they known each other? The answers shift depending on whether the show is treating time as passing or treating the boys as eternally young. This selective aging creates narrative flexibility at the cost of logical consistency. The show can reference long-term character relationships while keeping everyone the same age. It can show the town changing over years while the boys remain unchanged. It can acknowledge time passing while denying the consequences of time's passage. The boys' frozen ages affect more than just timeline logic. It impacts character relationships, creating contradictions in how Stan and Wendy's relationship status gets tracked throughout the series. In early South Park seasons, Stan Marsh and Wendy Testerberger have an on-again, off-again relationship that the show tracks clearly. They get together, they break up, they reconcile. The series follows their relationship status with consistency. When they're dating, episodes reference them as a couple. When they break up, episodes acknowledge the split. Their relationship timeline makes sense. Major breakup episodes like Raisins and The List treat their separations as significant events. The show dedicates entire episodes to their relationship drama, showing Stan's devastation when Wendy dumps him. These breakups matter. They affect Stan's behavior, his mood, and his storylines. The emotional weight only works if their relationship status has been consistently established. But as the series continues, episodes within the same season contradict whether Stan and Wendy are currently dating. One episode shows them together as a couple, holding hands and acting romantic. The next episode shows them broken up with no explanation for when they split. Then they're back together again, with no reconciliation scene. The show loses track of its own relationship timeline. Valentine's Day episodes create obvious contradictions. One Valentine's episode shows Stan and Wendy exchanging gifts as a couple. Another Valentine's episode in the same season shows Stan alone because he and Wendy aren't together. If Valentine's Day happens once per year, these episodes can't both occur in the same timeline. They depict opposite relationship statuses during the same holiday. Episodes sometimes reference their breakup as recent, treating the split as fresh and emotionally raw. Other episodes in close proximity reference them having been broken up for a while, acting like the separation is old news. The timeline of their breakup shifts based on what each individual episode needs, rather than maintaining consistency with nearby episodes. The show occasionally forgets to show them getting back together. They'll be broken up in one episode, then suddenly dating again in the next, with no explanation. There's no scene of Stan winning Wendy back, no moment of reconciliation, no acknowledgement that they were separated and now aren't. Their relationship status just changes between episodes, like someone forgot to check what happened last week. Other characters sometimes contradict each other about Stan and Wendy's status. One character will refer to them as a couple, while another character mentions they're broken up, all in the same episode. The show can't maintain internal consistency even within a single episode about whether these two are dating. This creates frustration for viewers trying to track the relationship. Are Stan and Wendy together right now? The answer depends on which episode you're watching and which line you're hearing. Their status has become completely arbitrary, shifting based on whether the current storyline needs them to be a couple or needs them to be single. The early seasons demonstrated that South Park could track relationship status when it wanted to. The Raisins breakup carries across multiple episodes, affecting Stan's behavior in various storylines. The show proved it could maintain romantic continuity, but it chose to abandon that consistency in later seasons. The contradiction isn't about major relationship changes happening off screen. It's about the show depicting opposite relationship statuses in consecutive episodes, with no transition. They're together, then they're not, then they are again, with no explanation for any of the changes. The status fluctuates randomly. Either Stan and Wendy have a consistent relationship status that changes only when shown on screen through breakup or reconciliation scenes, or their status depends entirely on what each individual episode needs, regardless of continuity with previous or subsequent episodes. The show clearly chose the latter approach, treating their relationship as a flexible plot device rather than an actual ongoing aspect of character development. This casual approach to relationship continuity mirrors how South Park handles other character details. If something doesn't matter to the current episode, the show ignores it, even if that creates contradictions with other episodes. Stan and Wendy's relationship exists in whatever state serves the immediate story, with no regard for whether that contradicts last week's episode. The inconsistency wouldn't be as noticeable if the show hadn't established clear relationship tracking in early seasons. By demonstrating it could maintain romantic continuity, then abandoning that effort, South Park made the later contradictions more obvious. Viewers know the show can do better because they've seen it do better. Stan and Wendy's relationship confusion creates one kind of continuity problem, but Kyle's medical condition appearing and vanishing proves the show will give characters diseases for one episode, then completely forget they exist. In episode Cherokee Hair Tampons, from season 4, Kyle becomes seriously ill and needs a kidney transplant. The episode treats his medical condition as serious and permanent. Kyle faces death without a transplant. His kidneys have failed. He requires immediate medical intervention or he won't survive. The condition is severe enough that doctors, parents, and friends all recognize the gravity of the situation. Earlier episodes also reference Kyle having diabetes. Characters mention his condition. Kyle manages his blood sugar. The show establishes diabetes as part of Kyle's medical history, something he lives with as an ongoing health issue. It's not a one-episode affliction that gets resolved. It's a chronic condition that should require continuous management. The Cherokee Hair Tampon's kidney failure connects to his existing health problems, suggesting Kyle has been dealing with serious medical issues for a while. The episode doesn't present this as Kyle's first health crisis. It builds on established medical vulnerability. Kyle is someone whose health requires attention and management. After these episodes establish Kyle's medical conditions, the show completely forgets about them. Kyle's diabetes disappears. His kidney transplant never gets mentioned again. He participates in physical activities with no indication he's managing any health condition. He eats candy and junk food with no concern for blood sugar management. The kid who nearly died from kidney failure shows no ongoing medical complications. Episodes post-Cherokee Hair. Tampons show Kyle being as physically active as any other character. He plays sports, goes on adventures, and engages in strenuous activities. Someone who required a kidney transplant should have medical restrictions or at least occasional references to his transplant status. Kidney recipients need ongoing care, medication, and monitoring. Kyle shows none of this. His diabetes management also vanishes entirely. Type 1 diabetes requires constant attention. Diabetics must monitor blood sugar, take insulin, manage diet, and stay aware of their condition. Kyle does none of this in episodes after diabetes gets established. He eats whatever he wants without checking blood sugar or taking insulin. He never has diabetes-related emergencies, despite engaging in activities that could trigger them. Other characters never reference Kyle's health conditions after they're initially established. His friends don't ask about his diabetes. His parents don't mention his transplant. Stan doesn't check if Kyle needs his medication. The entire show forgets that Kyle has chronic medical conditions requiring daily management. Episodes involving physical danger don't account for Kyle's health. He could die just like any other character, with no special concern for his compromised health status. Villains don't target his medical vulnerability. Enemies don't exploit his health conditions. His medical history simply doesn't exist in these episodes. The show established Kyle as someone with serious, chronic health problems that should affect every aspect of his life. Diabetes and kidney failure aren't minor conditions. They're major medical issues requiring constant attention. But South Park introduces these conditions for specific episodes, then completely abandons them when they're no longer plot relevant. This isn't a case of Kyle recovering from his conditions. Cherokee hair tampons doesn't show his kidneys healing. The diabetes episodes don't show him being cured. These conditions are presented as permanent medical realities Kyle must live with. Then the show ignores them entirely. Either Kyle has diabetes and received a kidney transplant, requiring ongoing medical management that should appear in subsequent episodes, or he fully recovered from conditions the show treated as permanent and chronic, or South Park gave him serious health conditions for plot purposes, then completely forgot about them when they were no longer convenient. The third option is obviously correct. The medical inconsistency reveals how South Park treats character details as disposable. If a trait serves an episode's story, it gets introduced and emphasized. When that trait becomes inconvenient for future stories, it disappears without explanation. Kyle's health conditions existed when they were useful, then vanished when managing them would complicate other storylines. This approach creates characters whose histories shift based on current needs. Kyle is whatever the current episode requires him to be. Need a medical crisis? Kyle has kidney failure. Need him climbing mountains. His transplant never happened. Need a diabetes joke? Kyle's diabetic. Need him eating candy freely? Diabetes doesn't exist. Kyle's disappearing medical conditions demonstrate the show's selective memory about character traits. But this problem extends to how characters behave toward each other, particularly in Butters' family. Steven and Linda Stotch demonstrate wildly inconsistent parenting across the series. In some episodes, they're overprotective and loving parents who worry deeply about Butters' well-being. In other episodes, they ground him for absurd reasons, lock him in his room for extended periods, and show alarming levels of abuse and neglect. The show treats both versions as normal for these characters, creating parents whose behavior depends entirely on whether the episode needs them to be sympathetic or terrible. Episodes showing the Stotches as caring parents depict them expressing genuine concern for their son. They worry when Butters goes missing. They protect him from perceived dangers. They try to provide a good home. In these episodes, they're flawed but fundamentally decent people who love their child and want what's best for him. Their overprotectiveness comes from caring too much, not from malice. Butters' very own episode reveals a much darker side. Steven Stotch discovers his wife having an affair, assumes his marriage is over, and decides to kill Butters rather than let his son grow up in a broken home. He takes Butters to various locations, attempting to murder him. He tries drowning Butters in the car. He contemplates other methods. This is attempted murder of a child, not just bad parenting. Steven plans and executes multiple assassination attempts on his own son. The episode treats this attempted murder seriously during the episode itself. Butters genuinely fears for his life. Steven acts with murderous intent. Linda covers up what she thinks is Butters' death. These aren't comedic parenting mistakes. These are criminal acts, showing complete disregard for Butters' life and well-being. Yet subsequent episodes show the Stotches back to normal parenting, sometimes even protective or caring. The attempted murder never gets referenced. Butters doesn't seem traumatized by his father trying to kill him. The family returns to their regular dynamic, as if Butters' very own episode never happened. The show expects viewers to forget Steven tried to murder his son. The grounding episodes create their own pattern of extreme behavior. Butters gets grounded for ridiculous reasons, having nothing to do with actual misbehavior. He gets grounded for things he didn't do. He gets grounded for being a victim of others' actions. He gets grounded for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The groundings are arbitrary, excessive, and psychologically damaging. Some grounding episodes lock Butters in his room for extended periods. His parents restrict his food. They deny him basic comforts. They treat grounding as solitary confinement rather than normal childhood discipline. Butters sits alone in his room for days, isolated from social contact, living in fear of his parents' reactions to anything he does. Other characters rarely comment on the Stotch's obviously abusive behaviour. When Butters shows up to school after being locked in his room for weeks, nobody questions it. When he describes his punishments, friends don't express concern. The show treats his parents' extreme behaviour as just another quirk of Butters' character, rather than something requiring intervention. The inconsistency in the Stotch's parenting creates moral whiplash. Episodes asking viewers to sympathise with their parenting struggles follow episodes where they commit child abuse. The show wants them to be both caring parents, worthy of empathy, and abusive monsters committing crimes against their child. These characterizations cannot coexist coherently. Either the Stotches are loving, overprotective parents who sometimes make mistakes but genuinely care about Butters, or they're abusive, dangerous parents who have attempted to murder their son and regularly subject him to psychological torture. Through extreme punishments, the show chose both characterizations depending on what each episode needs. This isn't about showing complex parents with both good and bad qualities. It's about showing opposite extremes that don't fit together. Attempted murder isn't a parenting flaw. It's not something that coexists with genuine parental love. Someone who tries to kill their child isn't also a caring parent who worries when that child is in danger. These are incompatible characterizations. The show's casual treatment of the Stotch's abusive behaviour suggests South Park isn't interested in maintaining realistic parenting dynamics. The Stotches exist to serve whatever parenting storyline the current episode requires. Need sympathetic parents? They're overprotective, but well-meaning. Need abusive parents? They're monsters who try to kill their kid. The characterization shifts completely based on story needs. Butters' parents' inconsistent behaviour mirrors a much stranger identity problem in another character, because Mr. Garrison's gender transitions create timeline and memory issues that prove South Park can't track its own character transformations. Mr. Herbert Garrison begins the series as a male teacher, with Mr. Hat as a puppet companion, later replaced by Mr. Slave as a romantic partner. In Season 9, Garrison undergoes a sex change operation and becomes Mrs. Garrison for multiple seasons. Episodes address the transition, show Garrison living as a woman, and reference her new gender identity. Then later, Garrison becomes male again, reverting to Mr. Garrison. The show treats these transitions inconsistently, with character memory and timeline contradictions appearing throughout. The initial transition to Mrs. Garrison receives significant attention. Mr. Garrison gets a sex change, shows the surgery, the recovery, and Garrison's adjustment to living as a woman. The episode treats this as a major life change with permanent consequences. Garrison commits to female identity, adopts female pronouns, and expects others to acknowledge her as Mrs. Garrison. Multiple seasons feature Mrs. Garrison as the elementary school teacher. Students address her as Mrs. Garrison. She dates men. Episodes reference her female status as established fact. The show maintains this identity consistently across numerous episodes, suggesting the transition is permanent. Mrs. Garrison becomes part of South Park's normal reality. Then Garrison transitions back to male identity. The reversal happens with less ceremony than the original transition. One season features Mrs. Garrison, the next features Mr. Garrison again, and the show expects viewers to accept that Garrison is male again. The female period becomes past history. Character memory about Garrison's transitions varies wildly. Some episodes have characters referencing Garrison's time as a woman, treating it as something everyone remembers clearly. Other episodes act as if Garrison was always the current gender, with no acknowledgement of transitions. The same character might remember or forget Garrison's gender history, depending on which episode they're in. Timeline confusion makes Garrison's gender history even messier. Flashback episodes showing past events sometimes depict Garrison as whichever gender serves that episode's story, regardless of what Garrison's actual gender was during that time period. Episodes set during Mrs. Garrison's tenure sometimes show Mr. Garrison instead, creating impossible situations where Garrison had different genders during the same events. The presidential election storyline further complicates matters. Garrison becomes President Garrison, referred to with male pronouns throughout the political episodes. But timeline-wise, does this happen after Garrison's transition back to male? Was Garrison ever female during the presidential campaign? Different episodes give different answers through their depiction of Garrison's gender status. Students' awareness of Garrison's transitions shifts based on episode needs. Sometimes the kids reference Garrison's gender changes, making jokes or comments acknowledging the transitions happened. Other times, the students act as if Garrison has always been the current gender, showing no memory of gender being different. Their awareness appears and disappears randomly. Other teachers' reactions to Garrison also vary. Some episodes show colleagues remembering Garrison's transitions and discussing them. Other episodes have staff treating Garrison as if the current gender is the only gender Garrison has ever been. PC Principal sometimes acknowledges Garrison's gender history, sometimes doesn't, depending on whether that knowledge serves the current plot. The show wants Garrison to have a complex gender history, while also wanting to treat Garrison's current gender as the default that was always true. These impulses contradict each other. Either characters consistently remember Garrison's transitions and reference them appropriately, or the show expects the audience to track which gender Garrison is in, which flashback, while characters seem to have selective amnesia about the timeline entirely. Either Garrison transitioned from male to female, lived as Mrs. Garrison for several seasons, then transitioned back to male, with all of this being remembered and acknowledged by other characters. Or Garrison's gender shifts based on current episode needs, while the show pretends continuity doesn't matter. The second option is clearly what's happening. The Garrison gender timeline creates impossible situations where Garrison's history contradicts itself. Was Garrison female during this event or male? The answer changes depending on which episode references that event. Did characters know Garrison when Garrison was female? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, even when the same characters are discussing the same time period. Garrison's shifting identity reveals how South Park treats character history as fluid, rewriting the past to serve present needs without concern for continuity. This approach extends to supernatural elements in the show. South Park exists in a world where Satan is a real character who appears multiple times across seasons. He has his own episodes, his own storylines, and his own character development. Satan appears physically, interacts with other characters, and demonstrates genuine supernatural powers. Hell exists as an actual location characters can visit. Satan throws parties there, maintains relationships, and rules over the afterlife realm. This establishes the supernatural as demonstrably real within the show's universe. Jesus Christ also exists as a real person in South Park. He hosts a public access television show called Jesus and Pals, where he takes calls from viewers and gives advice. Jesus performs actual miracles in episodes, demonstrating divine powers that work consistently. Characters treat Jesus' existence as common knowledge. He walks around town, interacts normally with residents, and nobody questions whether Christianity is true because Jesus is right there proving it. Multiple episodes feature genuine supernatural events. Witches perform real magic. Ghosts haunt locations with tangible effects. Demons possess people with observable consequences. Supernatural creatures appear and cause problems that require supernatural solutions. The show presents these events as actually happening, not as tricks or delusions. The Imagination Land trilogy specifically addresses the distinction between real and imaginary. Characters travel to Imagination Land, where imaginary characters live. The show establishes a clear boundary between the real world, where South Park exists, and Imagination Land, where imagination lives. This distinction only matters if real supernatural events actually happen in the South Park universe, while imaginary things remain imaginary. Yet other episodes treat the supernatural as completely fake. Characters express skepticism about ghosts, dismissing them as superstition. Episodes about alien abductions frame the experiences as dreams or hallucinations rather than actual events. When supernatural explanations are offered, characters reject them in favor of rational explanations. The show treats belief in the supernatural as silly and unfounded. Skeptical characters in these episodes act as if supernatural phenomena don't exist and have never existed. They dismiss supernatural claims as fantasy or mental illness. But these same characters have met Jesus. They've encountered Satan. They've witnessed actual supernatural events in previous episodes. Their skepticism makes no sense given their demonstrated experience with the supernatural. Ghost episodes create particularly obvious contradictions. Some episodes show genuine ghosts haunting locations with visible apparitions that multiple characters perceive. These ghosts have agency, intentions, and the ability to affect the physical world. Other episodes treat ghosts as nonsense, with characters mocking anyone who believes in them. The show's position on ghost existence shifts completely based on whether the current episode wants ghosts to be real. The Visitors and other alien-related episodes waver between treating aliens as real and treating alien belief as delusional. Some episodes show actual alien activity with physical evidence. Other episodes explain away alien encounters as government experiments or hallucinations. The show can't decide whether aliens exist in its universe or whether people who believe in aliens are crazy. Supernatural powers also vary in consistency. Characters sometimes have psychic abilities that work reliably. Other episodes establish that psychic powers are fake, that psychics are charlatans scamming people. The show treats psychic phenomena as both genuinely real and completely fraudulent depending on which episode you're watching. The contradiction creates philosophical confusion about South Park's universe. Is the supernatural real or not? The answer shifts based on episode needs. When the show wants Satan to be a sympathetic character dealing with relationship problems, Satan is real and has actual emotions and struggles. When the show wants to mock religious belief, supernatural claims are treated as absurd delusions. Either South Park exists in a universe where the supernatural is demonstrably real, with Satan, Jesus, ghosts, magic, and other phenomena confirmed through direct observation and interaction, or South Park exists in a universe where the supernatural doesn't exist and belief in such things is properly treated with skepticism. The show maintains both universes simultaneously, switching between them without acknowledgement. The supernatural reality problem extends to specific character history, particularly in how the show rewrites Token's name while claiming it was always something else. For 25 seasons and over 300 episodes, the Black family's son was named Token Black. The name appeared in credits episode after episode, season after season. Merchandise featured his name, spelled Token. Video games listed him as Token. The official South Park website identified him as Token. Every piece of official material spelled his name the same way for 2.5 decades. The name was an obvious meta-joke about tokenism in media representation. He was literally the token black kid in South Park. The joke was transparent and intentional. Token Black. One black character in an otherwise white cast. The name explicitly called attention to this fact. It was meta-commentary about television representation wrapped into a character name. Everyone understood this. The creators weren't subtle about it. Token existed as South Park's acknowledgement of and joke about having a single black character. Episodes made jokes referencing Token's name and its meaning. Characters occasionally pointed out that Token was the only black kid in school. The show was self-aware about what the name meant and what it represented. Token's name itself was commentary on tokenism in media. That was the entire point. Then season 25's episode, The Big Fix, completely rewrites this history. The episode reveals that Token's name has always been Tolkien, spelled Tolkien, after J.R.R. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings. According to this episode, every credit, every piece of merchandise, Every official source has always said Tolkien. Anyone who thought it was Tolkien simply misread the name. The show gaslit its own audience about something they'd been reading for 25 years. Stan discovers the truth when he finally sees Tolkien's name spelled out. He's been saying it wrong all along. He thought it was Tolkien, but it's actually Tolkien. The episode treats Stan as ignorant for not realizing this sooner. How could he not know that Tolkien was Tolkien? It's right there in the spelling. The name is obviously Tolkien. Other characters mock Stan for his mistake. They act shocked that Stan didn't know Tolkien's real name. They treat this as Stan being ignorant or insensitive. The episode frames Stan's reading of the name as Tolkien as a mistake on his part, rather than what the name actually was for 25 seasons. The episode never acknowledges that the name was spelled Tolkien in credits and materials for the entire run of the show. It pretends that Tolkien was always the spelling, and anyone who saw Tolkien was simply misreading. This is demonstrably false. Credits exist. Merchandise exists. Official sources exist. They all said Tolkien, not Tolkien. The retroactive spelling change extends beyond just the episode. After The Big Fix aired, official materials began spelling the name Tolkien. Credits changed, the website changed, and merchandise updated. South Park retroactively altered its own history to match the new spelling, pretending the name was always Tolkien. This creates an impossible situation. Either the name was Tolkien for 25 seasons, as shown in hundreds of credits and countless pieces of official material, then changed to Tolkien in season 25, with the show pretending it was always Tolkien, or viewers somehow collectively misread the same, named the same wrong way for 25 years, despite seeing it spelled in credits repeatedly. The first option is obviously correct. The Big Fix operates as meta-commentary about mishearing names and making assumptions. But the joke only works if Tolkien was actually the name for 25 seasons. The episode's attempt to claim it was always Tolkien doesn't land because it's demonstrably untrue. Credits don't lie. Merchandise doesn't misprint the same name wrong for decades. The name was Tolkien. The spelling change represents South Park's willingness to rewrite its own history when convenient. The show decided Tolkien worked better than Tolkien for whatever reason, changed the spelling, and tried to gaslight viewers into thinking it was always Tolkien. This approach treats continuity as completely flexible. Either Tolkien's name was spelled Tolkien for 25 seasons, as evidenced by credits and official materials, then changed to Tolkien with the show pretending this was always the spelling, or the name was always Tolkien and every credit, website, and piece of merchandise misspelled it identically for 25 years. The show chose to pretend the second option is true, while anyone with access to old credits knows it's false. The name rewrite connects to larger questions about character development and whether lessons learned in one episode matter in the next. Kyle Broflovsky frequently delivers speeches at the end of episodes, explaining what he learned from the episode's events. The pattern became one of South Park's signatures. Something crazy happens, chaos ensues, and Kyle delivers a thoughtful speech about the moral lesson. He often begins with, I learned something today, then explains the episode's message. Other characters listen to these speeches, nod in agreement, and supposedly absorb the wisdom Kyle shares. These speeches are treated as genuine moments of character growth and moral reflection. Kyle synthesizes the episode's events into a coherent lesson about tolerance, understanding, consequences, or whatever theme the episode explored. The speeches aren't played for laughs. They're presented as sincere attempts to extract meaning from chaos. Kyle speaks earnestly. Other characters respond seriously. The show pauses its comedy to deliver these moral lessons. Specific lessons address significant issues. Kyle explains why prejudice is wrong after episodes dealing with discrimination. He discusses the importance of understanding different perspectives after episodes about conflict. He talks about consequences of actions after episodes where characters face repercussions. These aren't trivial observations, they're meaningful life lessons that should affect how characters behave going forward. But the very next episode, the same characters make the exact same mistakes. They demonstrate the same flaws Kyle just explained. They show no evidence of having learned anything from the previous episode's lesson. Cartman doesn't become less racist after episodes about racism. Stan doesn't become more empathetic after episodes about empathy. Kenny doesn't stop dying after episodes about valuing life. The episodic reset erases all character development. Kyle delivers a speech about tolerance in one episode. The next episode features the same intolerance with no acknowledgement that anyone learned anything about tolerance. Kyle explains why lying is bad in one episode. The next episode has characters lying casually with no reference to the lying lesson. The speeches become meaningless because nothing changes afterward. Episodes occasionally acknowledge this pattern. Meta-episodes where characters comment on the show's structure sometimes reference how nobody ever really learns anything. They joke about the episodic reset, about how problems get solved, then immediately return. But these meta-acknowledgements don't fix the problem. They just make viewers aware that the show knows its moral lessons don't stick. The contradiction undermines the speech's purpose. Why deliver thoughtful moral lessons if those lessons have zero impact on future behavior? Why pause comedy for sincere reflection if that reflection changes nothing? Kyle's speeches become a ritual without meaning, a formula the show follows because it's expected rather than because it serves narrative purpose. Some episodes reference previous lessons briefly before characters ignore those lessons. Kyle might mention they learned something about a topic before, then proceed to violate that lesson anyway. This acknowledges continuity exists, while simultaneously demonstrating that continuity doesn't matter. Characters remember learning things while refusing to apply what they learned. The structure reveals South Park's commitment to episodic storytelling over series-long character development. Each episode exists independently. Events that happen don't carry consequences to future episodes. Lessons learned don't inform future behavior. Characters reset to their baseline personalities every episode, regardless of what they experienced previously. This approach has advantages for comedy. It allows the show to repeat similar situations without worrying about characters having grown past them. It keeps the dynamic stable so viewers always know what to expect from each character. It prevents the show from writing itself into corners where character growth makes certain stories impossible, but it makes Kyle's speeches hollow. The show wants these moments to feel meaningful while simultaneously ensuring they have no meaning. Kyle delivers sincere moral lessons that the show treats as important moments. Then the next episode proves those lessons didn't matter at all. The speeches exist to satisfy audience expectations without actually affecting the show's universe. Either Kyle's speeches represent genuine character growth that changes how characters behave in future episodes, or the show operates on complete episodic reset, where nothing learned matters by next week. South Park clearly chose the latter, while pretending the speeches matter. The show wants credit for moral reflection without accepting the consequences of characters actually learning and growing. This episodic reset affects how Cartman's character gets portrayed, swinging between genuine emotion and pure sociopathy with no consistency. Eric Cartman is South Park's villain. He's racist, manipulative, and completely lacking in empathy. He fed Scott Tenorman his own parents in Chile. He tried to commit genocide. He consistently demonstrates sociopathic behavior across hundreds of episodes. This characterization is the foundation of Cartman's character. He's the bad kid who does terrible things without remorse. But certain episodes show Cartman having genuine emotional moments that suggest he's capable of real human connection. In Kenny Dies, Cartman visits Kenny in the hospital, sits by his bedside, and cries when Kenny passes away. The tears appear genuine. The emotion seems real. For one episode, Cartman demonstrates that he actually cares about someone besides himself. Episodes exploring Cartman's friendship with Butters occasionally show Cartman being genuinely kind or protective. He invites Butters to activities, shares things with him, and sometimes shows concern for Butters' well-being. These moments suggest Cartman is capable of actual friendship, that beneath the sociopathy lies some capacity for human connection. Casa Bonita depicts Cartman going to extreme lengths to attend a restaurant with Kyle. While his methods are manipulative and terrible, the effort suggests Cartman values Kyle's friendship on some level. He wants to spend time with Kyle enough to engage in elaborate schemes. This implies relationship significance beyond pure antagonism. Other episodes show Cartman helping characters in ways that don't obviously benefit him. He solves problems, provides assistance, and occasionally does things that could be interpreted as kind if you ignore the context. These moments create ambiguity about whether Cartman is entirely evil or whether he has occasional glimpses of humanity. Then, the very next episode, Cartman returns to pure sociopathy. He's back to racism, manipulation, and cruelty without any trace of the humanity shown previously. The genuine emotion vanishes. The friendship moments disappear. Cartman becomes the monster again, showing no evidence that he's capable of caring about anyone. The emotional growth resets completely. Kenny Dies shows Cartman crying over his friend's death. The next episode has Cartman torturing Kenny, with no acknowledgement that Kenny dying was a significant emotional event. The hospital tears apparently meant nothing. Cartman's grief was real for one episode, then became irrelevant for all future episodes. The Butters friendship episodes suggest Cartman and Butters have a genuine bond. Then other episodes show Cartman treating Butters with casual cruelty, using him as a pawn, and expressing zero concern for Butters' well-being. The friendship exists only when the episode needs it to exist. Otherwise, Butters is just another person Cartman manipulates. Casa Bonita implies Cartman values Kyle's presence enough to scheme elaborately. Other episodes show Cartman actively trying to destroy Kyle's life, celebrating Kyle's suffering and expressing pure hatred. The schematic effort to spend time with Kyle becomes meaningless when most episodes depict their relationship as pure antagonism with no friendship element. The show wants Cartman to be both irredeemably evil for comedy purposes and occasionally sympathetic for emotional moments. These characterizations don't coexist logically. Someone who genuinely cries over a friend's death isn't someone who casually feeds people their parents. Someone capable of real friendship isn't someone who treats everyone as objects to manipulate. South Park picks whichever version of Cartman serves the current episode. Need an emotional moment? Cartman has feelings. Need a villain? Cartman is pure evil. The characterization shifts completely based on story requirements, with no attempt at maintaining consistency between episodes. Either Cartman is a complete sociopath, incapable of genuine empathy, as established in hundreds of episodes, or he's capable of real emotion and friendship, but chooses evil, or the show gives him humanity when emotionally convenient, then resets him to pure villain. The third option is clearly correct. This inconsistency prevents Cartman from having actual character development. He can't grow or change because any growth would limit the show's ability to use him as a pure villain. So emotional moments happen, appear meaningful, then get erased by the next episode's reset to baseline evil Cartman. The selective humanity makes Cartman's character incoherent when viewed across the series. Is he capable of love? Sometimes. Does he care about friends? Occasionally. Is he pure evil? Usually. The answer shifts constantly. Cartman's emotional inconsistency connects to timeline problems with Randy's age, which creates impossibilities affecting the entire show's chronology. Randy Marsh's age changes depending on what flashback or historical reference the episode needs. Flashbacks showing Randy as a teenager occur during the 1980s in some episodes. Other flashbacks show Randy as a child during events that also happened in the 1980s. Episodes reference him experiencing specific historical moments firsthand that would require him to be different ages, creating impossible timelines where Randy ages backward and forward as needed by individual episodes. Some flashbacks depict teenage Randy in the 1980s, showing him in high school or as a young adult during that decade. These episodes establish Randy as being born in the 1960s, making him currently in his 50s or 60s based on when the show airs. This age range matches his appearance as a middle-aged adult with a wife and children. But other flashbacks show child Randy during the same decade. Episodes depicting Randy's childhood place him as a young kid during the 1980s, which would make him born in the 1970s and currently only in his 40s or early 50s. These flashbacks contradict the teenage Randy flashbacks by depicting him as much younger during the same time period. The Crimson Dawn storyline shows Randy as a teenager or young adult in a 1980s boy band. He was old enough to be in a serious rock band, performing shows and recording music. This requires Randy to be at least a teenager, probably in his late teens or early 20s. If Randy was a young adult in the 1980s, he should be in his 50s or 60s now, but Stan's current age creates problems. Stan appears to be around 10 years old throughout the series. If Randy is in his late 50s or 60s, that means he had Stan relatively late, probably in his late 40s or 50s. This is possible, but unusual. Most characters in the show appear to have had children at more typical ages. Randy's appearance and behaviour suggest he's meant to be in his 40s, not his 60s. He acts like a man in midlife, dealing with career issues and parenting challenges typical of someone in their 40s. His physical appearance matches someone in their 40s rather than someone nearing retirement age. But the 1980s flashbacks showing him as a young adult make him too old for this age range. References to specific historical events Randy supposedly experienced create additional timeline problems. Episodes mention Randy being present at or aware of events from various decades. Some references require him to be old enough to remember events from the 1970s. Others suggest he was too young to have experienced those events firsthand. The 1980s band flashbacks alone create timeline impossibility. If Randy was in Crimson Dawn as a teenager in the mid-1980s, he'd be about 55 years old now. But if he was in his early 20s during the band's peak in the late 1980s, he'd be about 60. These ages don't match Randy's portrayal as a man in his 40s dealing with midlife issues. Randy working at Blockbuster creates similar problems. Flashbacks show him employed at Blockbuster during its 1990s peak. If Randy was working retail in the 1990s, was this before or after his geology career started? Before or after the band? The timeline becomes a confused mess where Randy's biography contradicts itself based on which flashback you're watching. His geology career requires years of education. Randy has at least a bachelor's degree in geology, probably a master's or PhD given his position. This education takes time. When did he attend university? If he was in a band in the 1980s and working retail in the 1990s, when did he get his geology degrees? The timeline doesn't accommodate all these different life periods. If Randy was born in the 1960s, he could have had his band phase in the 1980s, gotten his degrees in the early 1990s, and started his geology career by the mid-1990s. But this makes him much older than the show depicts. If Randy was born in the 1970s, he's young enough to match his current portrayal, but too young to have been in a band in the 1980s or working at Blockbuster in the 1990s. Either Randy has a consistent birth date and age that can be calculated from his flashbacks and Stan's current age, or his age fluctuates wildly depending on what historical period the show wants him to reference. Randy is simultaneously too old and too young for the flashbacks shown. Randy's impossible age connects to broader problems about how much time passes in South Park's universe. South Park has aired for over 25 years in real-world time. Throughout the series, characters reference years passing, celebrate birthdays multiple times, experience holidays repeatedly across seasons, and occasionally acknowledge that time has elapsed since previous events. The show mentions last year, or specific years ago, when referencing past episodes. Characters discuss things that happened in previous seasons as if real time passed between those events and now. Yet the boys remain in 4th grade looking exactly the same as they did in Season 1. Their appearance hasn't changed, their grade level hasn't advanced, their maturity level stays constant. They're frozen in time visually and developmentally, while the show itself continues airing year after year. Multiple Christmas episodes across 25 seasons establish that Christmas happens repeatedly in South Park. Same with Halloween, Thanksgiving, and other holidays. If these holidays occur annually, as they do in reality, then at least 25 years have passed in South Park's universe. But the boys are still in elementary school, looking and acting exactly as they did in 1997. Birthday episodes for various characters occur throughout the series. Stan has birthday episodes. Cartman has birthday episodes. Kyle has had birthday storylines. Butters celebrates birthdays. If these birthdays represent actual aging, then every character should be noticeably older. But nobody ages despite celebrating multiple birthdays across the show's run. Pop culture references require specific years to make sense. Episodes mock current events, reference recent news, and satirize contemporary culture. These references date episodes to specific years. An episode mocking 2016 politics clearly takes place in 2016. An episode about 2020 events clearly happens in 2020. This creates a timeline where South Park exists in real time, aging along with the real world. But characters can't age if South Park exists in real time. If the show has been running since 1997 and takes place in real time, Stan should be in his 30s by now. Kyle should be a grown adult. Cartman should have graduated college. The boys should be dealing with the adult problems, not elementary school conflicts. The show occasionally acknowledges time passing. Characters mention how long they've known each other. References to past events specify how many years ago those events occurred. South Park treats its own history as linear, with earlier seasons happening in the past and current seasons happening in the present. This only works if time has been passing normally. Technology changes reflect real-world time passage. Early seasons show 1990s technology. Later seasons show modern smartphones and current social media. The town updates its infrastructure. Businesses come and go. South Park changes with real time, showing the passage of decades through cultural and technological shifts. But none of these changes affect the main characters. Stan doesn't get a smartphone upgrade, reflecting that he's grown from child to adult. The boys don't change schools as they age. They remain perpetually in elementary school, using whatever technology is current, creating a situation where they're somehow still kids in an era decades beyond their starting point. Character relationships reference long histories that require time passage. Stan and Kyle have been best friends for years, with episodes explicitly stating how long they've known each other. Cartman has been tormenting Kyle for extended periods. Kenny has been dying repeatedly over what characters describe as a long time. These relationship histories only make sense if significant time has passed. The boys discuss past adventures and reference previous episodes as things that happened years ago. They remember events from early seasons, talk about how long certain situations have been going on, and acknowledge accumulated shared history. This requires linear time passage, where those events recede into the past as new events occur in the present. Either time passes normally in South Park, and the boys should have graduated college by now, based on 25 years of real-world time and multiple in-show references to years passing. Or time is completely frozen, and characters cannot reference years passing or experience multiple holidays annually. The show requires both to function. South Park needs time to pass for pop culture satire, for character histories to have weight, for the show to feel current and relevant. But South Park also needs time frozen to maintain its premise of elementary school kids dealing with childhood issues. The show chose both, creating a universe where time both passes and doesn't pass depending on what the current episode needs. The time passage contradiction affects everything, including Chef's character transformation. Chef begins South Park as the elementary school's kind lunch cook who genuinely cares about the children's well-being. Despite his adult-oriented songs about sex and his inappropriate relationship advice, he's portrayed as a fundamentally positive influence. Chef helps the boys solve problems, offers guidance when they're confused, and protects them from actual danger. He's the trusted adult figure who looks out for the kids even when he's making jokes they don't fully understand. Early seasons establish Chef as the person the boys go to when they need help. He listens to their problems, provides advice, and sometimes intervenes directly to protect them. His role in the show is clearly defined. Chef is the voice of reason, the adult who actually cares, the person who helps kids navigate confusing situations. He's inappropriate sometimes, but never malicious. His songs are adult-themed, but Chef himself maintains appropriate boundaries with children. He jokes about sex in ways that go over the kids' heads, but he doesn't cross lines. He's the cool adult who talks to kids like people while still maintaining proper adult-child relationships. The show trusts Chef with the kids because Chef genuinely cares about their welfare. Later seasons gradually make Chef more inappropriate with children. His behavior becomes increasingly uncomfortable. The line between adult humor and actual inappropriateness blurs. Chef starts acting in ways that don't match his established character as someone who protects kids. The shift happens slowly enough that it's easy to miss until suddenly Chef isn't the trusted adult anymore. Then, the return of Chef completely destroys the character. Chef returns to South Park brainwashed by the Super Adventure Club, a Scientology parody that's explicitly portrayed as a child abuse organization. The episode depicts Chef as a child molester who's been brainwashed into abusing kids. He tries to lure children with him, speaks in disturbing ways about kids, and behaves like a predator. The episode exists as South Park's response to Isaac Hayes leaving the show over the Scientology episode. The creators were angry that Hayes, who happily participated in episodes mocking other religions, quit when his own religion got satirized. So they created the return of Chef as retaliation, destroying Chef's character as viciously as possible. Chef dies horribly in the episode. He falls off a bridge, gets impaled, burned, defecated on by animals, and torn apart. The death is graphic and cruel. Then Chef returns as Darth Chef in later episodes, a zombified version serving as a grotesque callback to the character's destruction. Any positive aspects of Chef's character are completely erased. The character assassination was so extreme, it functioned as revenge against the actor rather than a storyline serving the show. The creators wanted to hurt Isaac Hayes for leaving, so they made Chef into the worst possible thing, a child abuser, then killed him in the most degrading way they could imagine. The 70-plus episodes establishing Chef as a good person who cares about kids became irrelevant. The Super Adventure Club brainwashing provided thin justification for Chef's behavior change. The episode claims Chef isn't really responsible because he's been brainwashed. But this doesn't fix the character assassination. Brainwashed or not, Chef became a child predator in his final episode. That's how his character ends. That's his final arc. The caring adult who protected kids becomes someone trying to abuse them. Later episodes occasionally reference Chef, but only in ways that acknowledge his twisted final form. There's no return to good Chef, no acknowledgement of his years as a positive character. The show treats post-return Chef as the definitive version, forgetting or ignoring the 70 episodes where he was someone completely different. Either Chef is the caring mentor figure, established in 70-plus episodes, who helps children and protects them from harm, or he's a brainwashed child predator who dies horribly after attempting to abuse kids. The show chose the latter as revenge for Isaac Hayes leaving, destroying years of characterization in one episode. This character destruction represents South Park's willingness to completely rewrite characters when real-world circumstances demand it. The creators valued their anger at Isaac Hayes more than they valued Chef's established character, so Chef became a monster. Years of positive portrayal got erased because the actor quit. Chef's destruction connects to format changes that created different continuity problems. Beginning around season 18, South Park experimented with serialization, creating ongoing storylines that spanned entire seasons rather than self-contained episodes. PC Principal's arrival, the Member Berries arc, Tegrity Farms, and other multi-episode storylines established new series continuity. These serialized seasons required viewers to watch episodes in order and remember previous events. The show moved away from its traditional episodic format towards something more like a season-long narrative. But simultaneously, South Park maintained its episodic reset, where events don't carry consequences. The show tried to have ongoing continuity while also preserving the ability to tell standalone stories that ignore previous episodes. This created seasons that both required you to remember previous episodes and explicitly ignored previous episodes, depending on what was convenient. PC Principal arrives in Season 19 as a major change to South Park Elementary's administration. He replaces Principal Victoria violently, establishes new rules, and changes the school's culture through intimidation. Multiple episodes explore PC Principal's impact on the school. The show treats his arrival as a permanent shift, a new era for South Park Elementary that will affect all future episodes. For several seasons, PC Principal remains the school's principal. Episodes reference his tenure, his policies, and his relationship with other characters. The show establishes PC Principal as a long-term addition to the cast, someone whose presence permanently changed the show's status quo. This is serialization working as intended, with character additions having lasting impact. But episodes within the PC Principal era also show the school functioning identically to how it operated before PC Principal arrived. Students behave the same. Teachers teach the same. The school's culture shows no evidence of PC Principal's supposedly transformative influence. Episodes that don't specifically need PC Principal for plot purposes ignore him entirely, reverting to pre-PC Principal dynamics. The Member Berries storyline in Season 20 attempted full serialization. Every episode connected to the Member Berries plot. Characters pursued ongoing mysteries. Storylines built across the season toward what seemed like a climactic revelation. The show committed to serialized storytelling more fully than it ever had before. Then the season just ended. The Member Berries plotline didn't resolve. Questions raised by the season remained unanswered. The big build-up led nowhere. The show abandoned its own serialized story midway through, leaving viewers confused about why they'd been asked to follow an ongoing narrative that went nowhere. Tegrity Farms represents another serialization attempt. Randy's marijuana farm becomes a recurring setting, an ongoing storyline. Multiple seasons feature Tegrity Farms episodes. The farm's status as Randy's primary business establishes a new normal for the Marsh family. This should represent permanent character and setting changes. But non-Tegrity episodes often ignore the farm entirely. Randy appears in episodes with no reference to his farming business. The show toggles between treating Tegrity Farms as Randy's defining characteristic and forgetting it exists. Serialization requires consistency. The show provides sporadic continuity instead. The problem with South Park's serialization attempt is that it conflicts with the show's comedy model. South Park works best with episodic storytelling that allows each episode to satirize whatever is currently relevant. Serialization requires planning future episodes around past episodes, limiting the show's ability to respond immediately to current events. Serialized seasons also required viewers to watch every episode in order. Missing an episode meant confusion about ongoing plotlines. This hurt casual viewership and made the show less accessible to new viewers. South Park built its success on standalone episodes that anyone could watch and enjoy without prior knowledge. Serialization removed that accessibility, so the show tried splitting the difference. It introduced serialized elements that occasionally mattered while maintaining enough episodic reset to keep making standalone episodes. This compromise satisfied nobody. Viewers who wanted serialization got incomplete stories. Viewers who preferred episodic format got frustrated by ongoing plots that interrupted standalone episodes. Either South Park committed to serialization, where events and character development carry across episodes and ongoing plotlines resolve properly, or it maintained pure episodic format where nothing matters by next week and each episode stands alone. The show tried both simultaneously and succeeded at neither. The format confusion affects how character development gets portrayed. particularly with Sharon Marsh's recurring growth and regression. Sharon Marsh spends early seasons as a typical sitcom wife, reacting to Randy's increasingly absurd behavior. She's the straight character who provides normal responses to the chaos Randy creates. Her role is mostly reactive, commenting on Randy's decisions without having strong storylines of her own. She's Randy's wife, Stan's mum, and not much else. Later seasons give Sharon actual character development. She stands up to Randy, calls out his behavior, and expresses genuine frustration with her life. Episodes like You're Not Yelping show Sharon reaching breaking points where she can't tolerate Randy's nonsense anymore. She threatens divorce, expresses anger about being taken for granted, and demonstrates she's more than just the tolerant wife character. Multiple episodes show Sharon developing a stronger sense of self. She makes demands, sets boundaries, and refuses to simply accept Randy's behavior. This represents genuine character growth, where Sharon evolves from passive wife to someone willing to advocate for herself. The show treats these moments as significant steps in Sharon's character development. But Sharon's development doesn't stick. The very next episode, after her big stand-up-for-herself moment, she's back to passively accepting Randy's behavior. The growth vanishes. Sharon returns to her baseline sitcom wife role as if the previous episode's development never happened. She tolerates the same nonsense she just said she wouldn't tolerate anymore. The Tegrity Farms transition provides the clearest example. Sharon explicitly opposes Randy's decision to become a marijuana farmer. She argues against leaving their home, expresses concerns about the lifestyle change, and makes clear she doesn't want to do this. Her opposition seems like it might actually matter, like Sharon's opinion might influence the family's decision. Then the family moves to Tegrity Farms anyway. Sharon's opposition becomes irrelevant. Despite expressing strong feelings against the move, Sharon goes along with it and adjusts to farm life. Episodes set at Tegrity Farms show Sharon living there without apparent resentment. Her earlier opposition is forgotten. She adapted to the change she explicitly didn't want. This pattern repeats throughout Sharon's characterization. She expresses frustration, demonstrates growth, stands up for herself, then immediately resets to passive acceptance. The show gives her moments of strength that lead nowhere. Sharon's character development consists of temporary assertiveness, followed by regression to baseline. Some episodes show Sharon genuinely angry at Randy for specific behavior. She's upset, she's had enough, she's done tolerating his selfishness. These episodes suggest real consequences for Randy's actions, real relationship conflict that might force change. Then the next episode shows them functioning normally, with no reference to Sharon's anger. The threat of divorce appears multiple times. Sharon mentions leaving, considers divorce, expresses that she's reached her limit. These should be major relationship moments that affect future episodes. Instead, they're empty threats that disappear by next episode. Randy faces no real consequences because Sharon's anger always resets. Sharon occasionally gets her own storyline separate from Randy. These episodes explore her perspective, her feelings, and her experiences. They provide depth to her character beyond just being Randy's wife. Then subsequent episodes ignore this depth entirely, returning Sharon to reactive wife mode. The inconsistency prevents Sharon from having actual character arc. She can't grow because any growth gets erased by the next episode's reset. She can't develop because development would change her relationship dynamic with Randy, and the show needs that dynamic to stay constant for comedy purposes. Either Sharon experienced genuine character development, where she found her voice and became willing to challenge Randy's behavior permanently, or she remained the passive sitcom wife who accepts whatever chaos Randy creates with temporary complaints that lead nowhere. The show gave her both characterizations depending on individual episode needs. Sharon's reset character growth creates the same problem Kyle's moral lessons create. The show presents meaningful moments, as if they matter, then immediately demonstrates they don't matter at all. Sharon's assertiveness exists only in the moment, erased by the next episode's need to restore the status quo. This pattern of growth and regression extends to other characters and storylines, including how the show handles relationship origins. In Season 19's Tweak X Craig, the boys discover that Asian girls have been creating romantic fan art shipping Tweak and Craig together. The entire episode's premise centers on people thinking Tweak and Craig are a couple when they're actually not. The boys are confused about why anyone would think they're dating. Tweak and Craig themselves are surprised by the shipping. This is explicitly their relationship origin story. They weren't together before this episode. The episode spends time exploring Tweak and Craig's reaction to being shipped. They're uncomfortable with people assuming they're gay. They don't understand why everyone thinks they're a couple. They're clearly not dating at the start of the episode. The fan art creates the perception of a relationship that doesn't actually exist. By the end of Tweak X Craig, the two boys decide to actually date. They hold hands, embrace, and commit to the relationship. The episode shows them going from, "We're not dating, why does everyone think we are?" to, "Okay, let's actually be boyfriends." This is their relationship beginning. Before this episode, they weren't together. After this episode, they are. But later episodes treat Tweak and Craig as if they've always been a couple. Characters reference them being together for a long time. The show acts like their relationship is long-standing rather than recent. References to Tweak and Craig as a couple appear in contexts that suggest they've been dating since before Season 19. Other characters sometimes act like Tweak and Craig being together has always been obvious. People treat their relationship as something everyone always knew about, rather than something that just started recently. The surprise element from Tweak X Craig vanishes. Now everyone always knew they were together. This retroactive history rewrites what Tweak X Craig established. The episode clearly shows them not being together, then getting together by the end. It's an origin story, but treating them as having always been together erases that origin, pretending the relationship existed before the episode that created it. The show occasionally references them having relationship milestones or anniversaries that don't make chronological sense. If they got together in Season 19, certain relationship references in later seasons don't match the timeline. The show treats their relationship as older than it actually is. Flashbacks or references to earlier seasons sometimes include Tweak and Craig as a couple, even though they provably weren't together during those seasons. The show retroactively inserts their relationship into past events, ignoring that those events occurred before the relationship began. This creates confusion about when they actually got together. Was it in Tweak X Craig as explicitly shown? Or were they together earlier and Tweak X Craig was just when they went public? Or were they together all along and everyone just didn't notice until the fan art? The show never clarifies, leaving their relationship origin murky despite having an explicit origin episode. The retroactive relationship history mirrors how South Park treats other character additions. Timmy and Jimmy weren't always there, but get retroactively inserted into the past. Tweak and Craig weren't always together, but get treated like they were. The show rewrites its own history to include things that provably didn't exist during the time periods being referenced. Either Tweak and Craig got together in Season 19's Tweak X Craig after not being a couple before that episode, or they've been together much longer and everyone always knew, or the show decided their relationship needed false history to feel more established. The first option is what actually happened. The show treats the second and third options as true anyway. The relationship timeline contradiction extends beyond just Tweak and Craig. It represents South Park's approach to continuity in general. When something becomes part of the show's present, the show sometimes pretends it was always part of the show's past, ignoring episodes that prove otherwise. This retroactive continuity makes tracking character relationships difficult. Was something always true, or did it become true recently, then get backdated? The answer varies based on which episode you're watching and which references you're hearing. The relationship origin confusion connects to how the show handles character wealth and economic status. Leanne Cartman is established as poor multiple times throughout the series. Episodes reference the family living in Section 8 housing, subsidized government housing for low-income families. Leanne works as a prostitute and later at various low-paying jobs. Characters reference the Cartman family's financial struggles. The show establishes them as distinctly not wealthy, living paycheck to paycheck in government-subsidized housing. Multiple episodes emphasize Cartman's family's poverty. Characters mock Cartman for being poor. References to their economic status position them at the lower end of South Park's economic spectrum. The family struggles financially, can't afford luxuries, and lives in housing designated for the poor. This is established canon about the Cartman family's economic situation. Yet Eric Cartman constantly has expensive new toys, gaming systems, and electronics. He owns every new console immediately after release. He has the latest games, the newest technology, and expensive gadgets. These aren't hand-me-downs or used items. Cartman has new expensive products all the time. When Cartman wants something, Leanne buys it for him. He demands expensive items and she provides them. He throws tantrums until he gets what he wants, and what he wants is usually expensive. Leanne doesn't tell him they can't afford things. She doesn't set budget limits. She acquiesces to his demands regardless of cost. The family takes vacations and trips that would require significant money. They travel to other states and countries. They stay in hotels. They participate in activities that cost money. These aren't cheap camping trips. They're actual vacations requiring funds the family supposedly doesn't have. The house itself contains nice furniture and decorations. It's not lavishly furnished, but it's not bare either. They have comfortable living arrangements, decent appliances, and home electronics. The house doesn't look like the home of a family in poverty. It looks like a middle-class home. Episodes explicitly about the family's finances contradict their lifestyle. When the show wants to focus on Cartman being poor, it emphasizes their poverty. When the show needs Cartman to have expensive things for plot purposes, those things appear, without explanation, for how they were afforded. The contradiction creates an impossible economic situation. Section 8 housing has income limits. Families living in subsidized housing can't have too much income, or they lose the housing. If the Cartmans qualify for Section 8, they're definitionally low income. But their spending patterns suggest middle class or higher income. Leanne's jobs don't pay enough to support their lifestyle. Prostitution income is unreliable and not usually enough for the family's apparent spending level. Her other jobs are explicitly low-paying. There's no source of income that would allow the lifestyle shown while qualifying for poverty-level housing. Cartman never worries about whether he can afford things. He expects to get whatever he wants. His attitude reflects someone from a wealthy family who's never faced economic constraints. But his family lives in government housing for the poor. These economic realities don't match. The show uses Cartman's family's poverty when it serves storylines about class, about Cartman being mocked, or about financial struggles. The show ignores their poverty when Cartman needs expensive items for plot purposes. The economic status exists or doesn't exist based on convenience. Either the Cartman family lives in poverty, as established through their Section 8 housing status and Leanne's low-income work, or they have enough money for Cartman to constantly acquire expensive items and the family to take vacations. The show maintains both economic statuses simultaneously, switching between them as needed. This economic impossibility mirrors other character inconsistencies, where established facts get ignored when inconvenient. The Cartmans are poor until they need to not be poor. Then they're not poor until the next episode about poverty. The economic status is a flexible plot device rather than a consistent character trait. The flexible economic status affects other aspects of character lives, including Mr. Mackey's addiction issues. Mr. Mackey serves as South Park Elementary's guidance counselor, the authority figure responsible for teaching children about dangers including drug abuse. His signature catchphrase, "Drugs are bad, McKay," defines his character. He lectures students about avoiding drugs and making healthy choices. This is his primary function. He's the anti-drug counselor warning kids about substance abuse. But multiple episodes show Mr. Mackey with serious drug and alcohol addiction problems that should realistically end his career in education. In Ike's Wee Wee, Mr. Mackey gets fired, becomes a hippie, and develops a serious drug problem. The episode shows him losing everything due to substance abuse. He's publicly intoxicated, clearly addicted, and unable to function professionally. The firing happens on screen. Mr. Mackey loses his job at the school. He spirals into homelessness and addiction. This isn't subtle. The episode explicitly depicts Mr. Mackey's substance abuse problem, severe enough to destroy his career and life. He becomes the person he warned students about becoming. Other episodes show Mr. Mackey drinking heavily or using drugs. These aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns of behavior suggesting ongoing addiction issues. Mr. Mackey appears intoxicated in public, demonstrates addiction symptoms, and behaves inappropriately due to substance use. Yet the very next episode after Ike's wee wee, Mr. Mackey is back in his office counselling students about avoiding drugs. He's employed again at the school. His addiction isn't mentioned. He's lecturing kids about drugs being bad, while his own drug problem from the previous episode has apparently vanished completely. His guidance counsellor position requires a license and background checks. Someone with Mackey's demonstrated substance abuse problems couldn't maintain counselling credentials. Schools can't employ counsellors with active addiction issues. His problems should have ended his career permanently, yet he returns to work with no explanation. Other characters don't reference Mackey's addiction history. Students don't question why the guy lecturing about drugs had a public drug problem. Teachers don't mention his past issues. The school apparently has no problem re-employing someone who was recently homeless and addicted. His history gets completely erased. Episodes showing Mackey intoxicated or using substances should create permanent consequences. Once you've been publicly fired for drug problems, you can't just return to counselling students about drug dangers. The credibility is gone. The trust is broken. But South Park resets Mackey to baseline counsellor without addressing any of this. The pattern repeats across seasons. Mackey has addiction issues in one episode, then he's back to drugs are bad McKay in the next, with no continuity between them. His substance abuse exists when the plot needs it, disappears when it would complicate other storylines. The contradiction creates dark comedy, but breaks character logic. Either Mackey has serious substance abuse problems that affect his professional life and should prevent him from counselling children about drugs, or he's a stable professional who occasionally has wild episodes that don't affect his career or credibility. The show chose both versions. Mackey's reset addiction mirrors Kyle's reset health conditions. Characters have serious problems in episodes specifically about those problems, then those problems vanish in all other episodes. South Park gives characters issues for plot purposes, then forgets those issues exist afterward. The guidance counsellor with addiction problems is particularly absurd because his job specifically involves warning against the behaviours he demonstrates. Mackey lectures about drugs while having drug problems. He counsels about alcohol while drinking excessively. He warns about addiction while being an addict. The hypocrisy is obvious but never addressed. Episodes could mine comedy from Mackey's hypocrisy, addressing the contradiction between his professional role and personal struggles. Instead, the show erases his struggles whenever they'd complicate his professional role. He has problems when convenient, doesn't have problems when inconvenient, either Mr. Mackey has serious substance abuse problems that should disqualify him from counselling children about drugs and should be addressed in his character development. Or he's a stable counsellor who occasionally has extreme episodes that somehow don't affect his professional standing. The show treats both as true depending on episode needs. This pattern of characters having serious problems that appear and disappear extends to Satan's characterization, swinging between sympathetic and evil. Satan appears frequently throughout South Park's run with wildly inconsistent characterization. In some episodes, he's portrayed sympathetically as a victim of abuse, trying to fit into society and find acceptance. In other episodes, he's pure evil incarnate, ruling hell and tormenting souls. The show cannot decide whether Satan is a complex, sympathetic character or the literal embodiment of evil, treating him as both depending on what each episode needs. The Saddam Hussein relationship episodes portray Satan as an abuse victim in an unhealthy relationship. Saddam manipulates Satan, uses him, and treats him terribly. Satan remains in the relationship despite the abuse, showing low self-esteem and desperation for companionship. These episodes present Satan as sympathetic, someone audiences should feel sorry for despite being the devil. Satan's abuse storyline receives genuine emotional weight. The episodes don't play his suffering for pure comedy. They show him struggling with relationship problems, dealing with manipulation, and trying to find self-worth. Satan becomes a character facing real emotional challenges, someone viewers can empathize with. Do the handicapped go to hell? And other episodes show Satan wanting acceptance and friendship. He's lonely, isolated, and wishes people would like him. These episodes position Satan as someone who wants connection, but struggles to achieve it because of who he is. He's misunderstood rather than malicious, but other episodes show Satan as genuinely evil. He rules hell, tortures damned souls, and revels in causing suffering. He's the antagonist, the force of evil that heroes must oppose. These episodes present Satan as the devil, from traditional religious understanding. Not a misunderstood victim, but an actual embodiment of malevolence. Hell's depiction varies based on Satan's characterization. When Satan is sympathetic, hell is more like an annoying afterlife than genuine torment. When Satan is evil, hell becomes a place of actual suffering where souls are genuinely punished. The nature of hell shifts to match whatever version of Satan the episode needs. Satan's power levels also fluctuate. Sometimes he's immensely powerful, capable of incredible, supernatural feats. Other times he's relatively weak, unable to accomplish basic tasks. His abilities depend on whether the episode needs him to be a credible threat or a sympathetic underdog. Character reactions to Satan vary too. Some episodes have people treating Satan casually, like he's just another person in South Park. Other episodes have characters appropriately fearful or respectful of Satan as the literal devil. Whether people take Satan seriously depends on how the episode is framing him. The show wants Satan to be both a sympathetic character audiences root for and the ultimate villain audiences oppose. These characterizations pull in opposite directions. Sympathy for Satan's abuse doesn't coexist with Satan as tormentor of souls. Understanding Satan's loneliness contradicts Satan as embodiment of evil. Satan's motivations shift completely between characterizations. Sympathetic Satan wants love and acceptance. Evil Satan wants to cause suffering and expand hell's population. These are fundamentally different characters with opposite goals and values, but they're supposed to be the same character across episodes. The abuse victim portrayal makes Satan vulnerable and weak. The evil devil portrayal makes Satan powerful and threatening. These versions of Satan can't exist simultaneously. Someone who's a vulnerable abuse victim isn't someone who rules hell with terrifying power. Someone who desperately wants friendship isn't someone who tortures souls for eternity. Episodes occasionally try to balance both characterizations, showing Satan as sympathetic in some moments and evil in others. But this creates tonal whiplash rather than nuanced character. The shifts feel like different characters rather than different aspects of one complex character. Either Satan is a complex, sympathetic character dealing with abuse, loneliness, and desire for acceptance, or Satan is pure evil incarnate ruling hell and tormenting souls. The show chose both characterizations depending on whether episodes need sympathetic Satan or villain Satan. This approach prevents Satan from having coherent character development. He can't grow or change because his baseline keeps shifting. Sympathetic Satan would develop differently than evil Satan, but the show needs access to both versions, so Satan remains inconsistent. The Satan characterization problem extends to how the show treats religious figures generally, particularly in how Jesus' existence affects the show's relationship with religious belief. Jesus Christ exists as a real person living in South Park. He hosts Jesus and Pals, a public access television show where he takes viewer calls and offers advice. Jesus is right there on local TV, accessible to anyone with cable. His existence isn't secret or hidden. He's a known community member who has a television program. This establishes Christianity as objectively true in South Park's universe, because Jesus literally exists. Jesus performs actual miracles throughout the series. He demonstrates divine powers that work consistently and observably. When Jesus uses his powers, they have real effects that multiple characters witness. These aren't tricks or illusions. Jesus performs genuine miracles, proving his divine nature. His powers work reliably across multiple episodes. Characters interact with Jesus normally, treating his existence as established fact. They call into his show, ask him questions, and see him around town. Nobody questions whether Jesus is real because he's demonstrably real. He exists physically, interacts with people, and participates in community events. Jesus' existence is as confirmed as any other character's existence. The show also establishes other religious entities as real. Satan exists and has been discussed. God appears in episodes. Religious cosmology in South Park is confirmed as actual reality rather than belief system. Heaven and hell exist as real locations characters can visit. Angels and demons are real beings. The entire religious framework is established as literally true. But other episodes treat religion as superstition and faith as blind belief without evidence. Characters express skepticism about religious claims, dismissing them as fantasy. Episodes mock religious belief as silly or irrational. The show takes a skeptical stance toward religion, positioning faith as believing things without proof. This creates an obvious contradiction. How can characters be skeptical about religion when Jesus has a public access show? How can faith be portrayed as belief without evidence when God and Satan demonstrably exist? The skeptical stance only makes sense in a universe where religious claims aren't proven, but South Park has proven them repeatedly. Characters who've met Jesus or witnessed miracles should have no reason for religious skepticism. They have direct evidence of Christianity's truth. Yet episodes will show these same characters expressing doubt about religious claims as if they've never encountered proof of the supernatural. Episodes mocking religious belief ignore that the belief is justified in South Park's universe. When the show satirizes blind faith, it's satirizing something that doesn't exist in its own world. Characters in South Park have evidence for religious claims. They're not believing based on faith alone. They've met Jesus. They've seen miracles. Their belief is empirically justified. The tension between Jesus' existence and religious skepticism creates tonal inconsistency. Episodes featuring Jesus treat religion as literally true. Episodes satirizing religion treat it as unprovable faith. These perspectives don't coexist logically in the same universe. Religious characters in South Park shouldn't be portrayed as believing things without evidence because they have evidence. Jesus is on TV. Miracles happen publicly. The supernatural is observable and confirmed. Belief in God isn't faith in South Park. It's acknowledging observable reality. Yet the show continues portraying religious belief as irrational while Jesus walks around town. It mocks faith while proving religious claims true. It satirizes blind belief while showing that belief is actually empirically justified in this universe. The contradiction is fundamental. Either South Park exists in a universe where religious claims are literally, demonstrably true, with Jesus, Satan, God, heaven and hell all confirmed as real, or South Park exists in a universe where religion is unprovable faith and skepticism is justified. The show treats both as true depending on whether episodes need Jesus to exist or need religion to be mockable. The show wants to satirize religious belief while also having Jesus as a character. It wants to treat faith as irrational while proving religious cosmology true. These goals contradict each other. You can't mock belief in Jesus when Jesus is right there on public access TV. This religious inconsistency reveals South Park's approach to satire. The show will take any position that serves the current joke, even if that position contradicts previous episodes. Jesus exists when that's funny. Religious belief is irrational when that's funny. The contradiction doesn't matter as long as each individual episode works. The religious reality problem connects to how the show handles character importance, particularly with Towely's fluctuating relevance. Towelie appears in Season 5 as a deliberately annoying character. He's a talking towel who gets high constantly and gives terrible advice. The episode itself acknowledges Towelie as a bad character through Cartman's repeated complaints. "You're the worst character ever," Cartman tells Towelie multiple times. The show seems self-aware about introducing an obnoxious character, making Towelie's annoyingness part of the joke. The meta-commentary suggests Towelie represents bad mascot characters that shows add for merchandising. He's everything wrong with corporate-mandated character additions. He has an annoying catchphrase. He's designed to sell toys. He interrupts the actual plot with irrelevant appearances. Towelie embodies lazy character design, and the show knows it. But then South Park keeps bringing Towelie back. After his introduction as a deliberately terrible character, he becomes a recurring character in the show's universe. Episodes feature Towelie in various capacities. He's not a one-off joke about bad characters. He's an actual character in the cast now. A Million Little Fibers creates an entire Towelie-centric episode. The show dedicates significant time to exploring Towelie's perspective, his struggles, and his attempts to change his life. This episode treats Towelie as a legitimate character, worthy of development, rather than the joke character he was introduced as. Backstory episodes reveal Towelie's origin as a military experiment. He was created by the government, given intelligence, and escaped from the lab. This provides depth to his character, explaining why he exists and where he came from. The show gives Towelie actual lore, treating him seriously rather than as the throwaway gag character he seemed to be. Towelie has emotional moments in later appearances. Episodes show him struggling with addiction, dealing with isolation, and trying to find purpose. These are genuine character beats rather than pure comedy. Towelie gets treated as a character with feelings and struggles, not just an annoying towel. Then other episodes return Towelie to irrelevant joke status. He appears briefly for a marijuana reference, says his catchphrase, and disappears. These appearances treat Towelie exactly like the bad mascot character he was introduced as. No depth, no development, just an annoying character who shows up randomly. The South Park video game makes Towelie a significant character again. He has actual importance to the plot, helps the player, and receives character development. The game treats Towelie as a legitimate part of the South Park universe, rather than a joke about bad characters. So which is Towelie? A deliberately terrible character that South Park created to mock lazy character design? Or a recurring character with actual depth, backstory, and emotional moments? The show treats him as both, depending on whether episodes need Towelie to be legitimate or need him to be a joke. The inconsistency prevents Towelie from having coherent identity. Is he self-aware about being a bad character? Does he know he's a joke? Or is he a real character in-universe who happens to be annoying? The show never clarifies. Episodes that develop, Towelie suggests the creators decided he was worth keeping around despite the initial joke. The character worked well enough to justify recurring appearances and actual storylines. This would mean Towelie evolved from meta-joke to legitimate character. But episodes that use Towelie as pure joke suggest the creators still see him as the bad character from his introduction. He remains the obnoxious mascot, just one they decided to keep using. This would mean Towelie never evolved beyond his original purpose. Either Towelie is a deliberately terrible character that South Park created as commentary about bad mascots and continues using as a recurring joke, or Towelie is a recurring character with genuine backstory and emotional depth who deserves to be taken seriously. The show chose both, unable to commit to either approach fully. This character confusion reflects South Park's broader inability to decide what its recurring characters mean. Are they real characters with development? Are they jokes about character tropes? The show wants them to be both, creating characters whose identities shift based on immediate episode needs. Towely's fluctuating importance mirrors how celebrity appearances create continuity problems. South Park regularly features real celebrities as characters in episodes. These celebrities get murdered, humiliated, or destroyed in various ways throughout the series. Tom Cruise gets trapped in a closet and later killed. Paris Hilton dies in her episode. Barbara Streisand transforms into a giant monster. Rob Reiner becomes a grotesque villain. These aren't subtle cameos. These are celebrities getting depicted doing terrible things or suffering horrible fates. Killing or humiliating actual celebrities should create massive media attention in South Park's universe. When Tom Cruise dies in the show, that should be national news. When Paris Hilton gets killed, that should dominate headlines. When celebrities experience the things shown in South Park episodes, the town should face serious consequences, including investigations, lawsuits, and intense media scrutiny. But the next episode, everything returns to normal. Nobody mentions the celebrity death. No investigations occur, no lawsuits happen. The town operates normally, as if the previous episode's celebrity incident never occurred. South Park resets to baseline, with no acknowledgement that they just killed or humiliated a famous person. The celebrity incidents should have permanent effects. If Tom Cruise died in South Park, the town would be permanently associated with his death. Media would constantly reference the town where Tom Cruise died. Investigations would continue for years. The boys who were involved would face ongoing scrutiny. South Park would become famous for the wrong reasons, yet none of this happens. South Park remains an anonymous small town, despite being the location where multiple celebrities died or were humiliated. No national attention results from events that would realistically generate massive coverage. The show needs celebrities to appear for satire purposes, but it also needs those appearances to have zero lasting consequences. The legal ramifications alone should be enormous. If someone killed Paris Hilton, even accidentally, that's a criminal investigation involving federal authorities. The entire town would be scrutinized. Everyone involved would face questioning. The incident would define South Park's reputation for decades. But South Park faces no legal consequences. No FBI shows up to investigate celebrity deaths. No lawyers file wrongful death suits. No authorities question anyone about what happened. The incidents that should generate intense legal attention generate zero legal attention. Media attention should be equally intense. National news would descend on South Park to cover celebrity incidents. Reporters would interview residents. The town would be under constant media surveillance. South Park would lose its anonymity immediately. Instead, South Park remains unknown. No media circus appears after celebrity incidents. No reporters investigate. National news doesn't care that multiple celebrities died or were humiliated in this specific Colorado town. The media attention that should follow these incidents never materializes. The celebrity families should also react. If Tom Cruise died in South Park, his family would take action. They'd pursue investigations, file lawsuits, and ensure consequences for those responsible. Celebrity deaths don't just disappear without family involvement, but no families appear. No relatives seek justice. No lawsuits get filed. The celebrities who die or get humiliated apparently have no families who care enough to pursue consequences. The show treats celebrity incidents as having no ripple effects beyond the episode where they occur. Either South Park exists in a universe where murdering or humiliating celebrities creates appropriate investigations, lawsuits, media attention, and lasting consequences for the town, or the town operates with complete episodic amnesia where last week's celebrity death never happened. The show chose amnesia for every celebrity incident. This allows South Park to satirize celebrities without dealing with realistic consequences. The show can kill Tom Cruise for comedy without addressing what killing Tom Cruise would actually mean for the town. It can humiliate celebrities without facing the legal and social ramifications humiliating celebrities would generate. The contradiction reveals South Park's commitment to episodic storytelling over realistic consequences. Celebrity incidents exist in isolated episodes with no impact on future episodes. The show needs this flexibility to continue satirizing celebrities without writing itself into a corner where South Park becomes the town that kills celebrities and faces permanent consequences. Either celebrities appearing in South Park and experiencing terrible things creates realistic consequences that affect future episodes, or each celebrity incident exists in isolation with no lasting impact. South Park clearly chose isolation, allowing unlimited celebrity satire without cumulative consequences. This approach to celebrity incidents connects to how secondary characters, like Ned and Jimbo, vanish without explanation. Ned Gerblansky and Jimbo Kern appear frequently in early South Park seasons. Jimbo is Stan's uncle, establishing a family connection that should make him a recurring presence. They run a gun shop together, participate in town events, and appear in multiple episodes across early seasons. The show establishes them as important community members with regular screen time and developed personalities. Their early prominence makes them feel like core supporting characters. Episodes feature their hunting trips, their gun shop business, and their interactions with other town residents. They're not background characters appearing randomly. They're active participants in South Park's community with defined roles and relationships. Jimbo's status as Stan's uncle matters particularly. This family connection should guarantee regular appearances. Stan visits his uncle, Jimbo attends family events, and their relationship provides natural opportunities for Jimbo to appear in episodes. Family members of main characters typically become recurring characters by default. The gun shop provides another reason for regular appearances. A business run by recurring characters usually means those characters appear whenever the business becomes relevant. The gun shop gives Ned and Jimbo a location, an occupation, and a reason to exist in South Park's world beyond just being random townspeople. But around season 7, Ned and Jimbo almost completely disappear. They're occasionally visible in background crowd shots, suggesting they still live in South Park. But they stop getting actual character moments, lines or storylines. The show essentially retires them without explanation or acknowledgement. No episode addresses their absence. Nobody mentions that Jimbo and Ned aren't around anymore. Stan doesn't reference his uncle. The gun shop stops being relevant. They simply fade from the show without the characters or audience getting any explanation for why they're gone. This creates a strange situation where they're technically still present but functionally removed. Seeing them in crowd shots confirms they exist in South Park's universe, but their presence is purely visual, with no character substance. They've become background decoration rather than actual characters. The family connection makes their disappearance particularly noticeable. Jimbo is Stan's uncle. That's a permanent relationship that doesn't change, yet Stan never mentions his uncle in later seasons. Family gatherings don't include Jimbo. Stan never visits his uncle's gun shop. The family connection that should guarantee Jimbo's presence gets completely ignored. Other characters never ask about Ned and Jimbo. Nobody wonders where they went or why they're not around anymore. The town functions as if they were never important community members, despite their prominent presence in early seasons. Their absence creates a hole that nobody acknowledges. The show doesn't explain whether they're meant to still be present or if they moved away. Background appearances suggest they're still in town, but complete lack of speaking roles suggests they might as well have moved. The show's ambiguity about their status creates confusion about whether they still exist as characters. Ned and Jimbo's disappearance represents changing cast priorities. South Park introduced many characters in early seasons, then gradually focused on a smaller core group. Characters who seemed important initially got phased out as the show found its central cast. This is normal for long-running shows, but the lack of explanation or acknowledgement makes the disappearance feel arbitrary. One season, they're recurring characters. The next season, they're gone, and nobody mentions it. A simple explanation like them moving away or retiring would provide closure. Instead, they just stop being relevant. Either Ned and Jimbo are important recurring characters, and Stan's family members who participate regularly in town life as established in early seasons, or they're irrelevant background characters who can be forgotten for entire seasons despite family connections and previous prominence. The show established the former, then switched to the latter with no transition. This character abandonment affects other supporting characters too, particularly in how LGBTQ plus representation gets handled. Big Gay Al debuts in Season 1's Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride in an episode specifically about LGBTQ plus acceptance and tolerance. The episode is one of South Park's earliest attempts at delivering a sincere message about not judging people based on sexual orientation. Al teaches the boys, particularly Stan, about accepting people who are different. The episode treats Al as an important character representing the gay community and challenging prejudice. The episode's importance in South Park's history makes Al feel like a significant recurring character. He's not just a random guest character. He's the focus of a landmark episode that addresses serious themes with relative sincerity. Al represents South Park's willingness to tackle social issues through comedy. Later, Al gets married to Mr. Slave in an episode about gay marriage. The wedding episode treats their relationship as important, using it to explore debates around marriage equality. Al and Mr. Slave become South Park's prominent gay couple, representing LGBTQ plus relationships in the show's universe. The marriage should establish Al as a permanent recurring character. Between these major appearances, Al mostly vanishes. He's not a regular presence in episodes. He doesn't appear in background shots. He's not mentioned in casual conversation. For long stretches, Al completely disappears from the show, despite being positioned as an important character in his debut and marriage episodes. The pattern reveals South Park's approach to Al. When the show wants to address LGBTQ plus themes, Al appears. When episodes don't specifically need LGBTQ plus representation, Al disappears. He's a representation character deployed for specific purposes rather than a character who exists independently. This creates inconsistency in Al's importance to the show. His debut episode and marriage episode suggest he's a significant part of South Park's world. His absence in most other episodes suggests he's barely part of that world at all. The contradiction makes his actual role unclear. Other LGBTQ plus characters in South Park show similar patterns. They appear prominently in episodes about LGBTQ plus issues, then vanish when those issues aren't being addressed. The show's LGBTQ plus representation becomes episodic rather than integrated into the ongoing cast. Mr. Slave appears more regularly than Big Gay Al, despite being introduced later. But even Mr. Slave's appearances are inconsistent. Sometimes he's a visible community member. Other times he doesn't appear for seasons. His presence fluctuates based on whether episodes need him. The inconsistent presence affects how authentic the representation feels. If LGBTQ plus characters only appear when episodes specifically address LGBTQ plus themes, they become plot devices rather than fully realized characters. They exist to represent their identity rather than existing as people who happen to be LGBTQ plus. Big Gay Al specifically suffers from this pattern because his debut episode positioned him as potentially a recurring character who'd appear regularly. The message of his introduction was that being gay is normal and people should be accepted as part of the community. But Al's sporadic appearances suggest he's not actually part of the community in any regular way. The wedding episode reinforced Al's importance. Marriage is a major life event that typically results in characters appearing more often, not less. Getting married usually makes characters more embedded in the show's universe. But Al's marriage didn't increase his presence. He remained sporadic. Either Big Gay Al is an important recurring character whose presence enriches the show regularly as suggested by his significant introduction and marriage episodes. Or he's a representation character who only appears when episodes specifically need LGBTQ+ themes addressed. The show treats him as the former in certain episodes and the latter in practice. This representation inconsistency extends beyond just Al. South Park's approach to minority representation often follows similar patterns. Characters representing specific groups appear when those groups are episode topics, then vanish when they're not. This creates a cast that feels like it only includes diversity when diversity itself is being discussed. The pattern undermines the sincerity of episodes like Big Gay Al's debut. The episode teaches acceptance and integration, but Al's subsequent absence suggests he hasn't actually been integrated. He remains separate, appearing only when explicitly needed rather than being a natural part of the community. Big Gay Al's inconsistent presence connects to bigger problems with the show's serialization experiments. Season 20 of South Park attempts full serialization with the Member Berries storyline. These cute creatures make people nostalgic for the past, appearing as a recurring element throughout the season. Multiple episodes develop the Member Berries mystery, treating them as a genuine threat to society. Characters investigate their origins, discuss their influence, and build toward what seems like a season-ending confrontation with whatever the Member Berries represent. The season dedicates significant screen time to Member Berries. They're not a background element. They're central to Season 20's narrative, appearing in most episodes and driving major plot lines. The show treats them seriously, suggesting they represent something important about nostalgia, political manipulation, or societal regression. Character reactions to Member Berries evolve across the season. Initially dismissed as harmless, they gradually become recognized as dangerous. This progression suggests planned narrative development leading toward resolution. The season builds mystery around Member Berries' ultimate purpose and origin. Various storylines connect to the Member Berries plots. The presidential election storyline intertwines with Member Berries. Character arcs relate to Member Berries' influence. The season constructs an elaborate web of connected plots, all supposedly leading toward addressing what Member Berries mean and how to stop them. Then the season just stops. The Member Berries storyline doesn't resolve. No explanation for what they really are. No confrontation with the force behind them. No conclusion to the mystery the season spent building. The storyline simply ends with questions unanswered and plots unresolved. The final episodes of Season 20 don't provide closure. Member Berries remain unexplained. Their purpose stays mysterious. The threat they supposedly posed never gets addressed. The season-long build-up leads nowhere, leaving viewers confused about why they invested in following this serialized narrative. Later seasons don't return to Member Berries. They don't resolve the dangling storylines. Member Berries just disappear from the show, as if the entire Season 20 plot never happened. The show abandons its most ambitious serialization attempt without explanation. This represents South Park's serialization experiment failing. The show tried maintaining ongoing narratives across an entire season, building mysteries that required viewer investment and attention. Then it failed to deliver payoff for that investment, essentially wasting the audience's time following storylines that went nowhere. The failure affects viewer trust in future serialization attempts. If South Park won't bother resolving season-long plots, why should viewers invest in following them? The Member Berries abandonment makes future serialization less effective because audiences remember getting burned. Several theories explain what happened. Maybe the creators didn't know how to resolve the storyline and gave up. Maybe they lost interest mid-season and moved on. Maybe external factors forced them to abandon planned conclusions. The show never explains, leaving viewers to speculate about why the storyline crashed. Some episodes in later Season 20 feel like they're trying to wrap up plots hastily. The season seems aware it's not going to resolve everything properly, but continues anyway, creating a disjointed viewing experience where some plots matter and others don't. The Member Berries failure proves South Park works better episodically. The show excels at standalone episodes satirizing current events. It struggles with maintaining long-term plots, requiring consistent development and eventual resolution. The serialization experiment revealed limitations in South Park's format, but the show learned the wrong lesson. Instead of returning fully to episodic format, South Park continued attempting partial serialization in later seasons. This created ongoing confusion about which plots would matter and which would get abandoned like member berries. Either Season 20 committed to serialization and should have resolved the member berries storyline properly, completing the season-long narrative it built, or South Park cannot maintain serialized plots and should have stuck with episodic format. The season chose to attempt serialization, fail at completing it, and leave viewers confused about why they were asked to follow an unresolved story. The member berries disaster connects to other permanent but not permanent changes like PC Principal. When PC Principal arrives in Season 19, the show treats this as a major permanent change to South Park Elementary. He violently removes Principal Victoria, who had been the school's principal for 18 seasons. PC Principal dramatically changes the school environment with new policies, aggressive enforcement, and physical violence against anyone who violates politically correct standards. Multiple seasons feature him as principal, suggesting this is a lasting alteration to the show's status quo. The Arrival episode makes clear this is meant to be significant. Principal Victoria's removal is sudden and shocking. PC Principal's methods are extreme and immediately establish him as a very different kind of administrator. The show treats this change as something that will fundamentally alter how South Park Elementary operates. Multiple seasons of PC Principal's tenure reinforce his permanence. He's not a temporary character or a one-season replacement. He continues as principal across multiple seasons, appearing in numerous episodes and maintaining his role. This extended presence suggests the show committed to PC Principal as a permanent addition to the cast. His character also develops across seasons. PC Principal isn't static. He gets storylines, relationships, and character growth. He becomes a more complex character than his introduction suggested. This development implies investment in the character beyond just using him for one joke or one season. But the school simultaneously functions identically to how it operated before PC Principal arrived. Students behave the same, teachers teach the same way. School culture shows no lasting evidence of PC Principal's supposedly transformative policies. Episodes that don't specifically feature PC Principal revert to pre-PC Principal school dynamics. The dramatic changes PC Principal supposedly implemented don't appear to actually change anything. His aggressive enforcement of political correctness doesn't create a more politically correct environment. His violence against students doesn't make students more compliant. His new policies don't alter how the school operates day to day. Episodes focusing on school activities often proceed as if PC Principal doesn't exist. School assemblies, classroom scenes, and student interactions mirror pre-PC Principal episodes. The principal's office might have a new occupant, but the school itself hasn't actually changed in any meaningful way. This creates confusion about whether PC Principal actually matters. He's physically present across multiple seasons, but his presence doesn't affect anything beyond episodes specifically about him. He's both permanent and irrelevant, a character who permanently replaced another character without permanently changing anything. The contradiction reveals South Park's inability to commit to permanent changes. PC Principal represents major status quo alteration in theory. In practice, he's just a different character in the principal's office, while everything else stays the same. The show wants credit for making bold changes without accepting the consequences of actually changing things. Principal Victoria's removal should have been irreversible and significant. She'd been principal for nearly 2 decades. Replacing her should matter. But her replacement only matters when individual episodes decide it matters. Most of the time, having a different principal changes nothing. PC Principal's specific character traits also get selectively applied. Sometimes his political correctness obsession drives episodes. Other times he's just a generic authority figure with no distinct personality. His defining characteristic appears or disappears based on whether episodes need politically correct principle or just need generic principle. The physical violence that characterized his introduction also becomes inconsistent. Early PC Principal beats up people constantly. Later PC Principal rarely uses violence. His methods change without explanation, suggesting the show itself isn't sure what PC Principal is supposed to be beyond the principle now. Either PC Principal permanently changed South Park Elementary's administration and culture in meaningful ways, creating lasting effects on how the school operates, or he's just another character in the building while the school functions identically to how it always has. The show chose the second option while pretending the first is true. This connects to the final inconsistency about South Park's relationship with its own history. South Park has run for over 25 seasons, producing more than 300 episodes. Throughout this extensive run, the show regularly makes references to events from early seasons, expects audiences to remember callbacks to decade-old episodes, and rewards longtime viewers with deep-cut references. This suggests South Park values its history and maintains awareness of past events. The show treats its catalogue as a unified whole, where early episodes matter as much as recent ones. But simultaneously, South Park ignores its own past completely. Characters forget experiences they had. Storylines contradict earlier episodes. The series operates as if previous seasons didn't establish anything permanent. Facts stated explicitly in one episode get contradicted in another with no acknowledgement. The show expects viewers to remember deep-cut references, while also expecting viewers to forget massive contradictions. Deep-cut references demonstrate South Park's awareness of its history. Episodes call back to obscure moments from Season 3, reference one-off characters from years ago, and build jokes on viewers remembering specific past events. These references only work if viewers and creators remember the show's extensive catalogue. The callbacks reward longtime viewers who've watched since early seasons. Inside jokes reference past episodes, character returns rely on audience memory, and plot points connect to events from seasons prior. South Park constructs itself as a show that values its history and expects dedication from viewers willing to remember hundreds of episodes. Yet major contradictions show the creators either don't remember their own episodes or don't care about consistency. Kenny's death memory rules change completely between episodes. Cartman has two different fathers. Randy's career history makes no chronological sense. These aren't minor continuity errors. These are fundamental character facts that contradict themselves across the series. Characters forget their own experiences regularly. Major life events from one episode vanish by the next. Relationships that were important become irrelevant. Lessons learned get unlearned. Experiences that should define characters get erased. South Park treats character memory as completely flexible, existing only in the moment. The show asks viewers to remember past episodes for callbacks, while simultaneously asking viewers to forget past episodes that contradict current episodes. This creates impossible viewing expectations. Should audiences track continuity or ignore it? The answer changes based on whether the show wants continuity to matter in that specific moment. South Park's relationship with its history reveals its priority: individual episode quality over series-wide coherence. Each episode should work perfectly on its own. If making an episode work requires contradicting previous episodes, the show contradicts previous episodes without hesitation. Present episode needs always trump past episode facts. This approach has advantages. It gives creators maximum flexibility to write any story without worrying about continuity constraints. It allows the show to respond immediately to current events without checking whether responses contradict previous positions. It keeps every episode accessible to new viewers who haven't seen the entire series, but it also creates frustration for viewers who do track continuity. Contradictions become obvious. Character inconsistencies pile up. The show's universe feels incoherent when viewed comprehensively. South Park only makes sense if you watch each episode in isolation, ignoring everything else. The callbacks prove the creators remember past episodes. They choose which past events to honor and which to ignore based on convenience. They remember when remembering serves comedy. They forget when remembering would complicate comedy. Their relationship with their own history is purely strategic. Either South Park maintains continuity, where past events matter and should be remembered, making references meaningful and contradictions problematic, or the show operates on complete episodic independence, where nothing from previous episodes matters, and contradictions don't exist because each episode is its own universe. The show tries having both approaches simultaneously. This impossible relationship with history extends to every inconsistency discussed in this video. Kenny's death memory, Cartman's father, Randy's career, character ages, relationships, abilities, and facts all shift because South Park prioritizes individual episodes over series continuity. The show wants credit for deep lore while refusing to maintain that lore consistently. These 3 hours of South Park inconsistencies prove the show has no consistent relationship with its own history, its characters' development, or basic timeline logic. Every contradiction exists because South Park prioritizes whatever makes the current episode work over whether that contradicts previous episodes. The show treats its own past as simultaneously important enough to reference and meaningless enough to contradict whenever convenient. South Park's inconsistencies extend to how episodes handle Cartman's genuine emotions versus his sociopathic baseline. The show cannot decide if Cartman is capable of authentic human connection or if he's pure evil, with occasional strategic, emotional displays. Episodes showing Cartman crying over Kenny's death suggest real friendship. Episodes showing Cartman feeding Scott Tenorman, his own parent, suggest complete absence of empathy. These versions of Cartman cannot exist simultaneously in one coherent character. The Kenny hospital scene in Kenny Dies presents Cartman as genuinely affected by his friend's terminal illness. He sits by Kenny's bedside, shows visible distress, and cries when Kenny passes away. The emotion appears authentic rather than manipulative. For this episode, Cartman demonstrates that he cares about someone besides himself, that he's capable of grief and loss, that friendships matter to him. But this emotional capacity disappears completely in subsequent episodes. Cartman returns to tormenting his friends, showing zero concern for their well-being and treating everyone as objects to manipulate. The grief he showed over Kenny becomes irrelevant. Kenny dying again in later episodes doesn't produce similar emotional reactions. The hospital scene might as well have never happened. Casa Bonita shows Cartman going to extreme lengths to attend a restaurant with Kyle. While his methods involve kidnapping Butters, the effort suggests Cartman values Kyle's company enough to engage in elaborate schemes. This implies their relationship has some significance beyond pure antagonism. Cartman wants to spend time with Kyle, even if he pursues that goal through terrible means. Yet most episodes show Cartman actively trying to destroy Kyle's life. He celebrates Kyle's suffering, pursues schemes specifically designed to hurt Kyle, and expresses pure hatred with no friendship element. The Casa Bonita valuation of Kyle's presence becomes meaningless when Cartman spends most episodes trying to make Kyle miserable. The show occasionally gives Cartman moments where he helps others without obvious benefit to himself. These moments suggest capacity for good, or at least capacity for behavior that isn't purely selfish. Then the next episode shows Cartman being cartoonishly evil, with no trace of the goodness shown previously. This creates a character whose fundamental nature shifts based on episode needs. Cartman with feelings serves emotional episodes. Cartman without feelings serves comedy episodes. The show picks whichever version works better for the current story without maintaining consistency between episodes. Either Cartman is capable of genuine emotion and friendship, as shown in Kenny Dies and other emotional moments, or he's completely incapable of authentic human connection, as shown in hundreds of sociopathic episodes. The show cannot commit to either characterization, leaving Cartman's essential nature undefined and contradictory. The fundamental question about Cartman remains unanswered. Is he a complete monster who occasionally fakes emotion for manipulation? Is he someone with capacity for feeling who chooses evil? Is he capable of growth that immediately gets erased? The show refuses to decide, maintaining multiple incompatible versions of the character simultaneously. Character inconsistency prevents meaningful development. If Cartman's capacity for emotion appears and disappears randomly, he can't grow. If his relationships with other characters fluctuate between genuine connection and pure hatred based on episode needs, those relationships have no actual depth. He's whatever the current episode requires him to be. This flexibility serves comedy, but destroys character coherence. The show wants freedom to make Cartman sympathetic when emotionally convenient and monstrous when comedically convenient. This requires erasing previous characterization constantly, creating a character whose essential nature remains undefined after 25 seasons. Butters Stotch experiences abuse from his parents that should realistically result in Child Protective Services intervention. Episodes show him locked in his room for extended periods, denied basic necessities, and subjected to psychological torture through extreme punishments. His father attempted to murder him in Butters' very own episode. These are serious crimes that would normally trigger mandatory reporting and investigation. Yet nobody intervenes. Teachers see Butters return to school after obvious abuse. Other parents witness the Stotches' parenting methods. The boys know Butters gets grounded for absurd reasons. Despite numerous people being aware of the situation, no adult reports the abuse to authorities. Child Protective Services never appear. The abuse continues unchallenged across seasons. The grounding episodes establish patterns of extreme punishment. Butters gets grounded for things he didn't do, for being victimized by others, for existing at the wrong time. The punishments are disproportionate, lasting weeks or months for minor perceived infractions. This represents psychological abuse through isolation and excessive discipline. Some episodes show Butters locked in his room with restricted food access. Denying children adequate nutrition as punishment crosses the line from strict parenting to abuse. Other characters know this happens because Butters mentions it, yet nobody questions whether this treatment is appropriate or legal. The attempted murder in Butters' very own episode should have ended Stephen Stotch's custody permanently. He tried to kill his son. Butters survived by accident, not because Stephen changed his mind. This isn't bad parenting. This is attempted homicide of a child. Stephen should be in prison. Butters should be in foster care or with relatives. Instead, the family returns to normal by next episode. Stephen faces no consequences. Butters remains in his parents' care. The attempted murder never gets referenced again. The show erases one of its darkest moments as if it never happened, allowing the family dynamic to continue unchanged. South Park Elementary's staff should be mandatory reporters. Teachers are legally required to report suspected child abuse. They see Butters regularly, hear his stories about punishments, and observe signs of abuse. Their failure to report represents professional negligence and violation of mandatory reporting laws. Other parents should also report. When Butters visits friends, their parents see evidence of abuse. They hear about the extreme groundings. They know something's wrong. Yet nobody makes the call to Child Protective Services that should have been made years ago. The show treats Butters' abuse as a running gag rather than serious concern. His extreme punishments are played for comedy. His parents' behavior is presented as quirky rather than criminal. The normalization of abuse for comedic purposes creates uncomfortable viewing when the abuse is this severe. Either the Stotches' treatment of Butters represents serious abuse that should trigger intervention from teachers, parents, and Child Protective Services, or it's just exaggerated sitcom parenting that doesn't warrant concern. The show depicts serious abuse while expecting audiences to treat it as harmless comedy. The abuse inconsistency reveals South Park's tonal problems. The show wants to make dark jokes about child abuse, while also maintaining characters who commit that abuse as normal community members. It wants abuse to be both shocking enough for comedy and normalized enough that nobody intervenes. Real-world logic would end Butter's situation immediately. Attempted murder plus ongoing psychological abuse plus numerous witnesses equals Child Protective Services investigation. The Stotches would lose custody. Stephen would face criminal charges. Butters would receive help. South Park prevents this realistic outcome to maintain the status quo. Token Black's name was spelled Token for 25 seasons in credits, merchandise, and official materials. Then Season 25's The Big Fix retroactively changed the spelling to Tolkien and pretended it was always Tolkien. This represents South Park directly gaslighting its audience about something they'd been reading correctly for over 2 decades. The show altered its own history, then claimed that history never existed. Every piece of official South Park material spelled the name Token until The Big Fix aired. Credits listed Token Black. The official website identified him as Token. Video games used Token. Merchandise featured Token. For 25 years, every official source consistently spelled his name the same way. This wasn't ambiguous. Token was the documented official spelling. The name itself was an obvious joke about tokenism. Token Black, the Token Black character in an otherwise white cast. The meta-commentary was transparent and intentional. Everyone understood the name was commenting on representation in media. The joke worked because it was explicit rather than subtle. The Big Fix claims the name was always Tolkien after J.R.R. Tolkien, and everyone just misread it for 25 years. Stan discovers this truth and feels guilty for not knowing Token's real name. Other characters mock him for his ignorance. The episode treats Token as a mishearing of Tolkien that should have been obvious. But this is demonstrably false. Credits exist, they can be checked. Merchandise exists, it can be photographed. The official website used Token. This documentation proves the name was Token, not Tolkien. The show isn't revealing hidden truth, it's rewriting obvious history. After The Big Fix aired, official materials changed to Tolkien. Credits now list Tolkien Black. The website updated to Tolkien. New merchandise uses Tolkien. South Park retroactively altered its own documentation to match the new spelling, erasing evidence of the original name. This gaslighting extends to treating fans as wrong for knowing the original spelling. The episode framed Stan as ignorant for thinking it was Token, but Stan wasn't ignorant. It was Token. Credits said Token. Everyone who read Token correctly is now being told they were wrong to believe their own eyes. The name change represents South Park's willingness to rewrite anything when convenient. The creators decided Tolkien worked better than Token for whatever reason, changed it, and attempted to gaslight everyone into thinking it was always Tolkien. The attempt fails because documentation exists proving otherwise. The joke only works as meta-commentary if viewers know the name was actually Token. The Big Fix's attempt to claim it was always Tolkien undermines its own joke. The episode wants credit for revealing hidden truth, while actually just changing a name and lying about it. Either Token's name was spelled Token for 25 seasons, as shown in hundreds of credits and countless official materials, then changed to Tolkien with the show pretending it was always Tolkien, or every credit, website, and piece of merchandise misspelled the name identically wrong for 25 years. The first option is obviously correct. This name revision connects to South Park's broader inconsistency problem. The show will change anything about its own history when current episodes benefit from those changes. Previous spellings, previous character facts, previous relationships all become flexible when flexibility serves current stories. Nothing about South Park's past is stable or reliable because the show prioritizes present over past. The Token Tolkien gaslighting represents the most blatant example of South Park rewriting its history. Other inconsistencies can be explained as oversight or episodic storytelling. This one is deliberate historical revision, with the show actively denying documented reality. It proves South Park will contradict its own carefully documented facts when convenient. Mr. Garrison undergoes multiple gender transitions throughout the series. He begins as male Mr. Garrison, becomes female Mrs. Garrison after sex reassignment surgery, then becomes male Mr. Garrison again later. These transitions should be remembered consistently by other characters who witnessed them. Instead, character memory about Garrison's gender history varies wildly based on episode needs. The initial transition from Mr. Garrison to Mrs. Garrison happens on screen, and Mr. Garrison gets a sex change. The surgery, recovery, and adjustment period all get shown explicitly. Students witness their teacher transitioning. Other staff members see the change. The entire town knows Mr. Garrison became Mrs. Garrison because it happened publicly. Multiple seasons feature Mrs. Garrison as the established teacher. Students address her with female pronouns. Episodes reference her female identity. The show maintains this consistently across numerous episodes, suggesting the transition is permanent and remembered by everyone. Then Garrison transitions back to male. The reversal happens with less ceremony, but still occurs definitively. Mr. Garrison returns as the male teacher. The female period becomes past history that should be remembered by everyone who experienced it. But character memory about these transitions fluctuates. Some episodes have characters clearly remembering Garrison's time as female. They reference past events during the Mrs. Garrison era using correct context. They acknowledge the transitions happened and remember when. These episodes demonstrate consistent memory of Garrison's gender history. Other episodes show characters acting like Garrison has always been whichever gender Garrison currently is. No references to transitions, no acknowledgement of gender history. Characters treat current Garrison as the only Garrison they've ever known, ignoring years of a different gender identity. Flashback episodes create additional confusion. When showing past events, the show sometimes depicts Garrison as whichever gender serves that particular episode, rather than whichever gender Garrison actually was during that time period. Flashbacks to the Mrs. Garrison era occasionally show Mr. Garrison instead, creating impossible situations. Students' awareness shifts based on episode requirements. Sometimes they remember having Mrs. Garrison as their teacher and can discuss that time period accurately. Other times they seem to have no memory of Garrison ever being female, treating male Garrison as the only teacher they've ever had. The presidential storyline further complicates matters. President Garrison appears with male pronouns throughout political episodes. But timeline-wise, did this happen after Garrison's transition back to male? Different episodes give different implicit answers through their depiction of Garrison's gender status. Teachers' reactions also vary. Sometimes colleagues remember and reference Garrison's transitions. Other times, staff members act like Garrison has always been the current gender. Their memory appears and disappears randomly rather than maintaining consistent awareness of gender history. The show wants flexibility to use whichever version of Garrison works for current episodes. This requires variable memory, where characters remember transitions when that serves the story, and forget transitions when memory would complicate the story. The result is incoherent character knowledge about major events they witnessed. Either characters consistently remember Garrison's gender transitions because those transitions happened publicly and affected everyone who knew Garrison, or the show operates with selective amnesia where transitions get remembered or forgotten based on episode convenience. The second option is clearly what happens. This memory inconsistency prevents the transitions from having meaningful impact. If nobody reliably remembers gender history, then that history didn't really matter. Garrison's transitions become plot devices for specific episodes rather than actual character development that affects the show's universe permanently. The gender transition memory problem mirrors other memory inconsistencies. Characters remember or forget major events based on whether remembering serves current episodes. Kenny's deaths, relationship histories, character introductions, and now gender transitions all suffer from the same selective memory that exists only when convenient. South Park's relationship with character memory reveals its core priority: individual episode flexibility over series-wide coherence. Every memory becomes negotiable when episodes need different versions of history. The show's treatment of continuity extends to how it handles major events that should permanently change South Park's status quo. Celebrity deaths, supernatural confirmations, catastrophic incidents, and life-altering character experiences all happen in individual episodes, then get completely forgotten by the next episode. The town should be permanently changed by these events. Instead, everything resets to baseline, as if nothing happened. When celebrities die in South Park, this should create permanent consequences. Tom Cruise's death should be investigated. Paris Hilton's death should generate media attention. Multiple celebrity deaths in one small town should make South Park nationally notorious. Yet the next episode, nobody mentions any of this. The celebrity incidents vanished from history. Satan's existence as a real, observable being should fundamentally change how people think about religion and the afterlife. Characters have met Satan. They've seen hell. They know Christianity's basic framework is literally true. Yet other episodes show characters being skeptical about religion as if they've never encountered proof. The confirmed existence of supernatural entities gets forgotten when episodes need religious skepticism. Major property damage from various episodes should create long-term problems. Buildings destroyed, businesses ruined, and infrastructure damaged should require repair time and financial investment. But destroyed locations return to normal by next episode, with no explanation for how reconstruction happened instantly or where funding came from. Character near-death experiences should affect behavior permanently. When someone almost dies in one episode, they should be more cautious in future episodes. But characters who've nearly died multiple times show no evidence of those experiences affecting their risk assessment. They forget almost dying as soon as the episode ends. Kyle's kidney transplant should affect every subsequent episode. Someone who received a transplant has medical restrictions, needs ongoing care, and takes immunosuppressant medications. Kyle shows none of this in later episodes. The major surgery that saved his life becomes irrelevant immediately after the episode where it occurred. Life-changing revelations should change lives. When characters learn shocking information about themselves or others, this should affect their relationships and decisions going forward. But revelations get forgotten. Characters who learned important secrets show no evidence of that knowledge affecting them later. The town experiences apocalyptic-level events multiple times. Crises that should traumatize the entire population happen regularly. Yet nobody seems traumatized. The community shows no lasting effects from repeatedly facing potential extinction. Each catastrophe gets treated as if it's the first one they've experienced. Major relationship changes should stick. When characters get married, divorced, or significantly alter their relationships, these changes should remain unless specifically reversed. But relationships reset to baseline between episodes. Major changes vanish without explanation or acknowledgement. South Park wants the freedom to tell any story without worrying about how that story affects future episodes. This requires constant episodic reset where events don't carry consequences. The town can experience anything because nothing permanently changes the town. Characters can go through anything because nothing permanently changes characters. This episodic model works for individual episodes. Each episode can be wild, extreme, and consequence-free without constraining future episodes. But it prevents the show from building meaningful continuity. Events that should matter don't matter. Experiences that should change characters don't change them. Nothing sticks. The contradiction between treating history as important for callbacks while ignoring history for continuity creates confusion about what matters in South Park's universe. Deep-cut references suggest old episodes matter. Complete lack of consequences suggests old episodes don't matter at all. The show wants both approaches simultaneously. Either major events in South Park create lasting changes that affect future episodes, requiring the show to maintain continuity and deal with consequences, or every episode exists in isolation with no lasting impact on the town or characters. The show chose isolation while pretending continuity exists through occasional callbacks. This approach maximizes creative flexibility while minimizing coherence. South Park can reference its history selectively for humor, while ignoring that same history when it would limit storytelling options. The result is a show that simultaneously values and dismisses its own past. South Park's serialization experiments in later seasons attempted to create ongoing narratives while maintaining episodic flexibility. This hybrid approach satisfied neither viewers, who wanted full serialization, nor viewers who preferred pure episodic format. The show couldn't commit to either model, resulting in storylines that started strong then fizzled without resolution, leaving audiences confused about why they invested in following plots that went nowhere. The Member Berries arc exemplifies failed serialization. Season 20 built this mystery across multiple episodes, suggesting Member Berries represented something significant about nostalgia and political manipulation. The season constructed elaborate connections between Member Berries and other plotlines, treating them as a genuine threat requiring investigation and eventual confrontation. Then the season simply abandoned the storyline. No resolution, no explanation, no payoff for the mystery. Viewers who invested in following the Member Berries plot got nothing for their attention. The show asked for serialized viewing commitment, then failed to deliver on why that commitment mattered. This failure damaged future serialization attempts. When later seasons introduced ongoing plots, viewers questioned whether those plots would actually resolve or just get abandoned like Member Berries. The trust required for serialization broke when the show proved it wouldn't bother completing season-long narratives. Partial serialization creates the worst aspects of both approaches. Viewers must watch episodes in order to follow ongoing plots, losing the accessibility of episodic format. But the plots don't resolve properly, losing the payoff that justifies serialization. The show demands investment without earning it through proper resolution. PC Principal's arrival suggested major status quo changes. The dramatic removal of Principal Victoria and implementation of PC Principal's policies seemed like permanent alterations. But the school functions identically to before PC Principal arrived in episodes that don't specifically need him. His presence changes nothing in practice, despite being treated as significant change in theory. Tegrity Farms shows similar problems. Randy's marijuana farm becomes a recurring setting across multiple seasons, suggesting permanent change to the Marsh family situation. But episodes regularly ignore Tegrity Farms entirely, reverting to pre-farm dynamics. The permanent change exists only when convenient. The show's serialization attempts reveal uncertainty about what South Park should be. Traditional episodic format allows immediate response to current events, a key strength. Serialization requires planning future episodes around past episodes, limiting flexibility to satirize news as it happens. The show tried splitting the difference and succeeded at neither. Serialized seasons also alienated casual viewers. Someone watching their first South Park episode shouldn't need to understand complex ongoing plots from previous episodes. But serialization creates that barrier to entry, making the show less accessible to new audiences and occasional viewers. The episodic reset that made South Park successful contradicts serialization requirements. Episodes needed to work standalone for syndication, DVD collections, and casual viewing. Serialization breaks this model by requiring sequential viewing and continuity knowledge. The show couldn't maintain both approaches simultaneously, so South Park tried compromise, occasional ongoing plots mixed with mostly episodic structure. This created confusion about which episodes mattered for future episodes and which could be watched independently. The inconsistent approach left everyone unsatisfied. Either South Park commits fully to serialization, where events carry consequences and plots resolve properly across seasons, or it maintains pure episodic format, where each episode stands alone. The show chose neither, attempting hybrid approach that failed to deliver satisfying serialization or clean episodic structure. This indecision affects every aspect of continuity. Characters develop, then reset. Relationships change, then revert. Status quo alterations prove temporary despite being presented as permanent. Nothing commits fully to sticking because the show can't commit to serialization over episodic flexibility. The serialization failure connects to broader questions about what South Park wants to be. A show that responds immediately to current events, or a show with developing characters and ongoing narratives? These goals conflict. The show's attempts to pursue both simultaneously resulted in achieving neither effectively. Future South Park will likely return to primarily episodic format. The serialization experiments prove the show works better when events don't need to carry consequences. Individual episode quality matters more than series-wide coherence for South Park's comedy model. The failed experiments demonstrated what the show does best: standalone satirical episodes that can be watched in any order. The most fundamental inconsistency in South Park involves time itself. The show simultaneously treats time as passing normally and as completely frozen. Characters reference years passing, celebrate multiple birthdays, experience holidays repeatedly across seasons, and discuss long-term character relationships. Yet the boys remain eternally in fourth grade, looking exactly the same as they did in Season 1, despite over 25 years of real-world time passing. Multiple Christmas episodes across 25 seasons establish that Christmas happens repeatedly in South Park. Each Christmas episode treats the holiday as annual, occurring once per year. If Christmas happens once annually, and the show has 25-plus Christmas episodes, then at least 25 years have passed in South Park's universe. But the boys haven't aged a single year. Birthday episodes compound this problem. Stan has had multiple birthday episodes. Cartman celebrates birthdays repeatedly. Kyle has birthday storylines across seasons. If birthdays represent aging 1 year, these characters should be adults by now. But they remain the same age despite multiple confirmed birthdays. Pop culture references require specific time periods. Episodes mocking 2016 politics clearly take place in 2016. Episodes about 2020 events clearly happen in 2020. The show exists in real time, addressing current events as they happen. This creates a timeline where South Park ages alongside the real world from 1997 to present. But characters aging in real time would make them adults. If the show started in 1997 with 8-year-old fourth graders and has run until 2025, those fourth graders should be 36 years old now. Stan should have a mortgage. Kyle should have a career. Cartman should be dealing with adult problems. The eternal fourth grade becomes impossible when acknowledging real-time passage. Technology changes reflect decades passing. Early seasons show 1990s technology with VHS tapes and landline phones. Later seasons show modern smartphones, streaming services, and current social media. The town updated from 1990s infrastructure to 2020s technology, showing clear time passage through cultural and technological evolution. Character relationships require time passage to have depth. Stan and Kyle have been best friends for years, with episodes explicitly stating their long history. Cartman has been tormenting Kyle for extended periods. These relationship histories only make sense if significant time has passed, allowing those relationships to develop and deepen. But none of these temporal changes affect the main characters. Stan doesn't upgrade his phone as a teenager, then an adult. He upgrades his phone as an eternal fourth grader, somehow existing across 3 decades. The boys remain frozen in age while their world ages around them. References to last year or specific years ago appear frequently. Characters mention events from previous seasons as having occurred years prior. The show treats its own history as linear, with earlier seasons happening in the past. This only works if time passes normally between seasons. Yet episodic reset requires time not passing. Each episode needs the boys to be fourth graders dealing with fourth grade problems. Aging them would fundamentally change the show's premise. South Park needs them perpetually young to maintain its core dynamic. but maintaining that youth contradicts every temporal reference in the show. The frozen age affects every temporal inconsistency. How long has Kenny been dying? How many years has Mr. Garrison been teaching? How long have these families lived in South Park? Answers depend on whether time passes or freezes. The show requires both for different purposes. Either time passes normally in South Park with characters aging, holidays occurring annually, and years accumulating as shown through cultural changes and time references, or time is completely frozen with characters remaining eternally the same age. Despite apparent holiday cycles and historical progression, the show maintains both impossibilities simultaneously. This temporal contradiction is South Park's most fundamental inconsistency. Every other contradiction stems from this core impossibility. Characters can't maintain consistent histories when they exist in a timeline that both passes and doesn't pass. Facts can't remain stable when the universe operates on contradictory temporal rules. The time problem reveals why South Park's inconsistencies are inevitable rather than avoidable. The show's basic premise requires temporal impossibility. Fix the time contradiction, and the entire show collapses. So South Park embraces the contradiction, letting time pass and freeze as needed for individual episodes. After examining hundreds of inconsistencies across 25-plus seasons and 300-plus episodes, patterns emerge in how South Park handles continuity. The show prioritizes individual episode quality over series-wide coherence consistently. Every contradiction serves the same purpose, maximizing creative flexibility for current episodes, regardless of how that contradicts previous episodes. Character facts change when new facts serve current stories better. Cartman has two fathers because each father reveals served different episodes effectively. Randy has multiple careers because episodes needed him in different professional contexts. Characters gain and lose abilities, relationships, and histories based on immediate episode requirements, rather than maintaining consistency across the series. Timeline problems stem from refusing to commit to either passing time or frozen time. The show needs time to pass for pop culture satire and character history. The show needs time frozen to keep characters perpetually young. Rather than choosing one approach, South Park attempts both, creating impossible temporal situations. Memory inconsistencies allow characters to remember or forget events based on convenience. Kenny's deaths are remembered when that serves comedy, forgotten when that creates cleaner plots. Relationship histories exist when episodes need them, vanish when they'd complicate other stories. Character memory becomes completely flexible. Status quo changes prove temporary despite being presented as permanent. PC Principal permanently replaced Principal Victoria, except when episodes function as if Victoria never left. Tegrity Farms permanently changed the Marsh family situation, except when episodes ignore it entirely. Nothing commits to sticking because committing limits flexibility. Episodic reset erases all consequences from previous episodes. Life-changing events happen then vanish by next episode. Characters experience trauma, then show no trauma effects. Major revelations get learned then forgotten. Nothing from one episode affects future episodes unless specifically convenient. These patterns reveal South Park's core philosophy. The current episode matters more than anything that came before. Previous episodes exist to be referenced for callbacks when that serves comedy. Previous episodes get ignored when they constrain current stories. The past is purely strategic resource rather than consistent foundation. This approach has clear advantages. The show can satirize any current event without checking whether that contradicts previous positions. It can tell any story without worrying about continuity constraints. It maintains maximum flexibility for writers to pursue whatever seems funniest without past episodes limiting options. But it creates the universe where nothing is reliable. Character facts shift constantly. Timeline makes no sense. Relationships fluctuate randomly. Major events get forgotten. The show's world becomes incoherent when viewed comprehensively rather than episodically. South Park works best when watched as standalone episodes rather than continuous series. Each episode should be evaluated independently without expecting consistency with other episodes. The show's comedy model requires this approach. Attempting to track continuity creates frustration because continuity isn't the goal. The show's creators have occasionally acknowledged this approach. They've discussed prioritizing individual episode quality over series continuity. They've mentioned not worrying about contradictions if those contradictions allow better stories. The inconsistencies are features rather than bugs from their perspective. For viewers who enjoy episodic comedy without continuity expectations, South Park's approach works perfectly. Each episode delivers satirical humor without requiring knowledge of other episodes. The flexibility allows the show to remain relevant by responding immediately to current events. For viewers who enjoy continuity, character development, and consistent storytelling, South Park frustrates. The show occasionally pretends continuity matters through callbacks and references, then completely ignores that continuity when convenient. The mixed signals create confusion about whether tracking details matters. The question becomes whether South Park's inconsistencies represent failure or deliberate choice. The evidence suggests deliberate choice. The creators prioritize comedy over continuity consciously. They value flexibility over coherence intentionally. The inconsistencies serve their comedy model rather than undermining it. Understanding this philosophy helps viewers decide how to engage with the show. Expecting continuity leads to frustration. Accepting episodic independence allows appreciation of individual episodes without worrying about contradictions. The show works when viewed on its terms rather than through expectations it never intended to meet. South Park's relationship with its own history will likely never change. The show's success comes from its flexibility and immediate relevance. Maintaining strict continuity would constrain both, making the show less effective at what it does best, satirizing current events through absurd comedy. What makes South Park's inconsistencies particularly interesting is how they reveal the show's priorities and creative philosophy. Most long-running series attempt to maintain some continuity even when that continuity constrains storytelling. South Park explicitly rejects this constraint, treating continuity as completely optional and only useful when it serves immediate comedy needs. The show demonstrates unusual honesty about its approach. While many series accidentally create continuity errors through oversight or forgotten details, South Park's inconsistencies often feel deliberately chosen. The creators know they're contradicting previous episodes. They simply don't care because the current episode works better with the contradiction. This reflects a specific comedy philosophy where the joke matters more than the universe. If maintaining consistent character facts would make the current joke less funny, the character facts change. If keeping timeline coherent would constrain satirical opportunities, the timeline becomes incoherent. Comedy takes absolute priority over world building. The approach works because South Park's audience largely accepts it. Viewers tune in for satirical humor about current events rather than carefully constructed character arcs. The show's reputation is built on being shocking, relevant, and funny, rather than consistent, coherent, or logical. Inconsistencies don't damage what makes South Park successful. However, the show occasionally tries to have it both ways. Callback references and deep-cut jokes reward long-time viewers who remember past episodes. These references suggest the show values its history and expects audience investment. But then major contradictions show the show doesn't actually care about consistency. This mixed messaging creates confusion about how seriously to take South Park's universe. Should viewers track details or ignore them? The answer seems to be track details enough to get references, but don't track them enough to notice contradictions. The show wants informed viewers who maintain selective blindness. The inconsistencies also reveal how South Park views its characters. They're not people with consistent personalities and histories. They're comedy tools that can be adjusted as needed. Cartman isn't a coherent character. He's whatever makes the current episode funniest, whether that's sociopathic monster or sympathetic friend. This instrumental view of characters prevents traditional character development. Development requires characters learning, growing, and changing based on experiences. But South Park's episodic reset erases all growth immediately. Characters can't develop when every episode returns them to baseline. Yet the show occasionally pretends development matters. Kyle's speeches about lessons learned suggest growth is possible. Character relationships evolving suggests development occurs. But then everything resets, revealing those moments were fake development that never intended to stick. The serialization experiments in later seasons represented attempts to break this pattern. By creating ongoing storylines, the show tried committing to consequences and development. But the attempts failed because they conflicted with South Park's core model. The show couldn't maintain serialization while preserving episodic flexibility. The failure confirmed that South Park works best as pure episodic comedy. Attempts to add continuity, development, or ongoing plots ultimately weakened the show's strengths. The inconsistencies aren't bugs to be fixed. They're inherent to South Park's successful formula. Understanding this helps contextualize the hundreds of contradictions documented across this video. Each inconsistency represents a deliberate choice to prioritize current episode needs over past episode facts. The show isn't failing at consistency, it's succeeding at flexibility. For viewers who love South Park despite its inconsistencies, this explanation validates their experience. The show isn't broken, it's working exactly as intended. The comedy justifies the contradictions. Individual episodes succeed even when the series as a whole becomes incoherent. For viewers frustrated by the inconsistencies, this explanation won't help. If continuity matters to your enjoyment, South Park will never satisfy that need. The show has proven across 25+ seasons that it won't change its approach. Accept episodic chaos or watch something else. The real question isn't whether South Park should be consistent. The show has clearly answered that question with a resounding no across hundreds of episodes. The question is whether viewers can enjoy comedy that actively rejects continuity in favor of immediate satirical impact. Most viewers have made peace with South Park's approach. The show's continued success and cultural relevance suggest audiences value its strengths more than they're bothered by its inconsistencies. South Park found its formula and refuses to compromise it for traditional storytelling coherence. The inconsistencies document how thoroughly the show commits to its philosophy. Lesser series might accidentally contradict themselves occasionally. South Park systematically contradicts itself whenever contradiction serves comedy, demonstrating unusual dedication to prioritizing jokes over universe consistency. 3 hours of South Park inconsistencies reveal a show that treats its own history as completely flexible. Kenny's deaths are remembered and forgotten randomly. Cartman has 2 different fathers. Randy's career history makes no chronological sense. The boys age and don't age simultaneously. Characters learn lessons that immediately get unlearned. Relationships exist and vanish based on episode needs. Facts stated explicitly get contradicted without acknowledgement. These aren't occasional continuity errors from a show struggling to track 25+ seasons of content. These are systematic contradictions stemming from a deliberate creative philosophy that prioritizes individual episode quality over series-wide coherence. South Park chooses flexibility over consistency every single time that choice appears. The patterns are clear. Character facts change when new facts serve current stories better. Timeline becomes incoherent because the show refuses to commit to either passing time or frozen time. Memory becomes flexible, with characters remembering or forgetting events based on convenience. Status quo changes prove temporary, despite being presented as permanent. Episodic reset erases consequences from previous episodes. Every inconsistency serves the same purpose: maximizing creative freedom for current episodes, regardless of how that contradicts previous episodes. The show needs this freedom to satirize current events immediately, without checking whether responses contradict previous positions. It needs this freedom to tell any story without continuity constraints limiting options. The approach has obvious advantages. South Park can respond to news within days of events occurring. It can pursue any comedic idea without worrying about whether that idea fits established character facts or timeline logic. It maintains relevance through immediate responsiveness that would be impossible with strict continuity requirements, but it creates a universe where nothing is reliable. Watch one episode and Cartman is capable of genuine emotion. Watch the next and he's pure sociopathic evil. Watch one episode and time has passed with characters referencing years of history. Watch the next and everyone's the same age they've always been. The show's world makes sense only when viewing episodes in isolation. This works perfectly for South Park's target audience. Viewers tune in for satirical comedy about current events, not carefully constructed character arcs spanning decades. The show's reputation is built on being shocking, relevant, and funny, rather than consistent, coherent, or logical. Inconsistencies don't damage what makes the show successful. For viewers who enjoy episodic comedy without continuity expectations, South Park delivers exactly what they want. Each episode provides standalone satirical humor that works independently. The flexibility allows fresh stories every week without continuity constraints creating predictability. For viewers who enjoy continuity, character development, and consistent storytelling, South Park will forever frustrate. The show occasionally pretends continuity matters through callbacks and references, then completely ignores that continuity when convenient. The mixed signals create confusion that never resolves because the show fundamentally rejects consistent continuity. After 25-plus seasons and 300-plus episodes, South Park has proven it won't change its approach. The inconsistencies will continue because they're inherent to the show's successful formula. Attempts to add continuity through serialization failed because they conflicted with episodic flexibility. The show works best when events don't carry consequences and characters reset to baseline every episode. Understanding South Park's philosophy helps viewers engage with it appropriately. Expecting traditional continuity leads to frustration. Accepting episodic independence allows appreciation of individual episodes without worrying about contradictions. The show works when viewed on its terms rather than through expectations it never intended to meet. These hundreds of inconsistencies document how thoroughly South Park commits to prioritizing immediate comedy over long-term coherence. The show isn't failing at continuity, it's succeeding at flexibility. Every contradiction represents a deliberate choice to make the current episode work better, regardless of how that affects past or future episodes. South Park's relationship with its own history will never change, because changing would undermine what makes the show successful. The inconsistencies aren't bugs to be fixed. They're features enabling the comedy model that has kept South Park relevant for over a quarter century. The show that can contradict itself endlessly is the show that can satirize anything immediately, without limitation.